We'll call this meeting to order. Today is Thursday, January 9th, 2020. This is a meeting of the Pioneer Valley Regional School District School Committee. This meeting is being recorded by the Bernardston-Northfield Community Television for future broadcast, and it may be streamed live when available to do so. Please, for school committee members, let's review the norms and expectations for ourselves, and then we will begin with citizens' comments. I ask that we take no longer than 20 minutes in total if there are a significant amount of citizens' comments, and 3 minutes per person.
Hello.
Hello.
My name's Janice Starmer. I'm from Warwick. I'm here tonight to read a letter from a resident in Warwick. This is not from me. This is a letter written by Shauna Mallett, who has a student in kindergarten this year at Northfield. And it's to the PVRSD School Committee and Superintendent Jonathan Skagel. Greetings. I would like to state my extreme disgust for this current administration and school committee for continuing to put our family in distress by once again attempting to close Warwick Community School. Because whether or not you are calling it that, a vote to move more children from WCS to NES is an obvious attempt to close our school. Little by little, you are chipping away at the foundation of our school. First, it was taking a vote to refuse to allow children to be choiced into kindergarten. Then it was to vote to send kindergartners to NES and not have a pre-K kindergarten program. Now you are talking about moving first graders next year. Last summer, Superintendent Skagel, is that how you pronounce your name? Schedule, thank you. Last summer, Superintendent Schedule sat across from me at a meeting in the NESK classroom and assured me that Liam would not have to attend NES for 1 year. Now he potentially he would only have to attend NES for 1 year. Now he potentially will be there next year as well. I do not accept that. My family does not accept that. We live in Warwick, we pay taxes in Warwick, and we expect our children to be educated in Warwick. Rest assured, I will be seeking legal counsel if the vote tonight is to move first grade to NES next year, as this would be in direct violation of the district agreement, which states that elementary school students shall be educated in the town in which they reside unless consent is given by their parents. Consider this letter to be my official notice to this school committee and school administration that I do not consent for my child to be educated at NES. Thank you, Shauna Mallett.
Do you have a copy of that for us?
David does, I believe.
Okay, great, thank you.
I think that's true.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much. Okay.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Good evening.
I didn't come with a prepared presentation. Rather, I have a couple of handouts, as if you need more. One is a letter, and I think it kind of summarizes a lot of things that are being felt and thought in Warwick, and I suspect in towns other than Warwick. And one of those things is that we're wondering why the focus is on, or isn't on, reducing central administration costs. As our FinCom chair, Diana Noble, showed us in a presentation about a month and a half ago, it's now $8,800 per student. Now, I don't know about you, but that's an awful lot. Sounds like an awful lot to me. And I'm wondering why that isn't the focus of some efforts to cut costs in the district. But I am hoping that an article that appeared in Education Week can be entered into the record for this, this meeting, as well as the letter from me. And if you would be so kind as to read it, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thank you. And I think these are all, I went through all presidentials and then
Thank you. Okay, perfect, thank you. Anyone else need a copy of the letter? Everyone has a copy?
if there are extras, I'd love to
There are
have one.
extras here.
Thank you.
There, could you pass these down? Here's an extra one.
Thank you so much. Coming back.
Okay, anyone else?
Brian Hervey of Bernardston Finance Committee. I'm here again to talk about this lunch report. Among other questions I had on the financial statements, but perhaps another time, because there's a lot of questions I have. But I'm looking at the lunch report and I'm seeing some that started in the red and are now in the black. I'm seeing one that started in the red and is still in the red. We went through this 2 years ago, last year, I forget. Everything blends together after a while. But here we are again, in the red. Looks like Warwick is in the red. There's a loss on 4 of the schools. Bernardston's very close to being in the red. I'm hoping this is getting addressed. We all agreed to pay that $200,000 debt off, $250,000, something like that. Every town paid that off, and here we are again. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. No other citizens' comments? No? Okay. Before we begin with the minutes in our official meeting, I would like to welcome Ryan Potter, who is our new student representative, to the school committee meeting. So welcome, Ryan. We look forward to seeing you as we move forward.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Just wanted to say that I attended the winter concert the other night, and I was blown away. The kids did a fantastic job.
Great news. Thank you, Jim. Okay, so the minutes for the December 12th meeting were not provided, so at the next meeting, we will review those. Yep, go ahead.
I'd like to request that Tanya Campbell from Melanson Heath maybe do her presentation now, if that's okay. Move her up on the agenda.
Anyone opposed? No? Anyone opposed to it? No, how do you vote? Yeah, we should just have a motion.
I'll make a motion that we move up the report for Tanya to now.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Welcome, Tanya. Hello, everyone. How are you?
I'm the reason your stack of papers is so thick tonight, I believe. My name's Tanya Campbell. I'm from Melanson Heath, and I am the partner in charge of the district's audit. I'm here tonight to present the results of the fiscal year 2019 audit. Before we actually get into the documents themselves, I wanted to just kind of remind everyone that an audit does not provide 100% assurance that every single balance or transaction is audited or looked at during our audit. Nor does it guarantee that every dollar that was spent by the district was spent in accordance with internal policies and procedures or state laws. Instead, our audits are conducted under a set of standards known as government auditing standards. And those standards require that we plan and perform our audit using a concept known as materiality. In fiscal year 2019, materiality for the town's, or the district's general fund, or your main operating fund, was about $100,000. That doesn't mean we don't look at anything below that amount, because we certainly do. It just means that standards say we should focus our testing on balances at or above that level. Please feel free to stop me at any point in time when we're looking at things. If you have questions, we're going to start with the kind of the bigger of the two documents, the financial statements, and we're going to start on page 12. The one that has the, yeah. Everybody has a copy? You said page 12? Page 12, please, yep. Now, in the financial statements, there's essentially two sets of statements. You have your government-wide statements and your fund basis statements. Now, page 12 is the balance sheet, and it is one of your fund basis statements. Now, these statements are more in line with the type of information you would receive from your director of finance, and what's recorded in the district's general ledger itself. So your first column there is labeled general, and it's your general fund. And the other column, which is non-major funds, are your special revenue or your grant funds. So that column includes your school lunch fund, your school choice fund, the circuit breaker fund, as well as other grant funds are all consolidated and reported in that one column there. Now, in terms of some of the numbers I want to discuss on this page, kind of down towards the bottom left under fund balance, in the general fund, you'll see your general fund balance was about $545,000 at the end of fiscal year 2019. Past 2 years, in 2018, 2017, that number has been a deficit balance. So certainly a big improvement over the past few years. That balance represents about 3.5% of the district's annual operating budget. So healthy balance. Obviously, there's a lot of things that factored into that this year, but certainly moving in the right direction there. Now, a couple other numbers that aren't really on this page, but I did want to discuss because they've been kind of hot topics the past few years. Your school lunch fund had a deficit of about $270,000 at the end of 2018. At the end of 2019, that deficit was zero, thanks to the contributions from the member towns as well as a portion of the deficit financing. Your circuit breaker fund had a deficit of about $47,000 at the end of 2018. At the end of 2019, that balance was $91,000. And lastly, your school choice fund, which had a balance of $122,000 at the end of 2018. It had a balance of about $120,000 at the end of 2019. So that's also a good sign, as you know, in years past, that fund had kind of been used as a source to cover costs. So that fund stayed stable and everything else increased as well. So all good things in terms of that perspective. Some of the other numbers I wanted to point out on this page is they're kind of unusual and haven't been there in prior years. In the top section under assets, there's an intergovernmental receivable in your general fund of about $288,000. That represents your last state aid payment for the year. The state didn't process all those payments until the 1st of July, so every single community in Massachusetts and district received those funds late. So that's what that receivable represents right there. And then in your other liabilities, in your general fund of about $529,000, most of that is made up from an overpayment from the state. So earlier in the year, they overpaid you, and then they gave you your funds late. But that money is due back to the state, and they are aware of that. It's not included in your fund balance number, so that's just kind of sitting out there waiting to be repaid. But the state's pretty good about making payments, but they're not so good about getting them back when they do have an error. So that could still be there for all we know. Yes.
Which amount was that?
The $529,000, the majority of that under other liabilities is due back to the state.
Did they accidentally overpay us?
Mhm.
Really?
Yeah. I think they made some adjustments in the beginning of the year and kind of funded you some excess money early on, and then they didn't adjust for that partway through the year. So I did confirm that with the state, and they're,
And then, go ahead, Tanya. We
yeah.
have Tanya on
Yeah,
the
okay, that's true. She
computer.
knows more about it.
So basically what happened last year is they advanced us half of our chapter 70 state aid so that we didn't have to take a revenue anticipation note. And they were supposed to be manually adjusting our chapter 70 throughout the year, and there were a few months that they did not adjust that. So at the end of the year, we had been overpaid our chapter 70, and we appropriately reported that as due back to the state on our balance sheet. And I have been working very closely with Lisa Trzaskowski from DOR to get that rectified, and we have satisfied that money back to them as of November. And we've also satisfied our deficit bond as well.
Thanks, Tanya.
Any other questions on that page itself? Okay, we're going to flip back 2 pages to page 10. Now, page 10 is one of your government-wide statements, and it's similar to a balance sheet, but essentially what we do is we take the total from page 12, consolidate them together, and report them in one column as governmental activities. And then we go through and we add things such as your capital assets and your long-term liabilities. So the goal of this statement in that position is to essentially take your governmental operations and make them look like a business, which is fine, but you guys don't operate like a business. So in terms of the day-to-day operations, the fund basis statements are more meaningful for you, but in terms of showing the true assets and liabilities of the district, this statement does that. Now, in terms of some of the key numbers I want to look at on this page, about 3/4 of the way down under your non-current liabilities, you'll see total OPEB liability. Mm-hmm. That represents the district's unfunded retiree health insurance costs. And at the end of fiscal year 19, that number was about $31.6 million. That number did increase about $1.6 million from the prior year. Both years use the same valuation. So every other year, the district is required to get a new actuarial valuation. But on the in-between years, you're still required to update that valuation. Mainly because the accounting standard says you need to use the municipal bond rate as the discount rate in terms of calculating that liability at the end of the year. So the reason your liability changed so much is because the discount rate went down between 2018 and 2019. And that was seen across the board for all municipalities because they use a governmental bond index, essentially. So pretty much everyone saw a bump up in their OPEB liability. Now, as you're aware, there's no requirement to fund the liability at this time yet. That's soon to be, we'll see. But the district does pay the retiree health insurance costs annually as a pay-as-you-go as part of the normal operating budget. So you are funding that, it's just you have not established an OPEB trust fund. Clearly that is not a huge priority for the district at this point in time, but at some point, that would be something to consider, because that liability is not going away, and at some point there could be a requirement to fund it. Just FYI. Yeah.
OPEB is only health, the retiree health insurance does not include pension liability?
Right, the line above that is the pension liability, yeah. Big numbers, yeah. Okay. And that was actually the number I was going to talk about next, so thank you for leading me into that. Your net pension liability is the district's share of the Franklin Retirement System's unfunded liability. There is a requirement to fund that liability, and you guys do have a funding schedule. That liability also increased from the previous year. Again, the same valuation was used, but like OPEB, an annual update is done. The district's percentage of the liability didn't change. You're right around 7.25% of the total system itself. But the funded, percent funded of the system actually went down. So in 2018, the system was 76% funded, and in 2019, it went down to 69%. So that big change caused a spike in your liability of about $3.3 million. So likely due to market fluctuations and things along that nature. Your liability should theoretically go down each year, but it kind of does this on the way down because they're constantly adjusting assumptions and things along that line. So it's not unusual to see that go up, but that was a pretty sizable increase this year. So that was all I had for the financial statements, unless anyone had any other questions. I'm sure everyone read it front to back. I got it in the mail earlier. Yes. Yeah. Everyone laughs when I say that. I don't know. All right. So next we're going to look at the smaller of the two documents, the management letter. And I was just briefly going to talk about the comments in here, unless anyone had any specific questions. Now, in terms of the types of comments that can be reported in the management letter, there's a few different kinds. There's material weaknesses, which is a deficiency in the district's internal control structure that is so great that a material misstatement could occur and go undetected for a period of time. There are none of those in the district's management letter this year. There are also no significant deficiencies, which are similar to a material weakness, but not quite as severe, and still would warrant the attention of those charged with governance. There are none of those either. There is one compliance finding, which is a repeat from the prior year in terms of compliance with Mass General laws, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And the other comments are just recommendations for improvements or things we found during the audit. And those are the kind of comments you guys want. Or, well, I don't know if you want them, but those are the best kind of comments to have.
What page are we on?
Page 3 of the management letter. We're just going to start with, I was just, sorry, yeah, going on about that. So comment number 1 is a couple of smaller issues that we found. The first has to do with obtaining backup documentation for the annual GIC retiree health insurance bill. They're known for just sending like a one-page summary, like, you owe us this much money and please pay it. But there's no backup documentation for who you're paying costs for. So we recommend that the district obtain that so they know who they're paying health insurance costs for and that they're valid and, not to sound awful, but still alive. I don't know if Tanya wants to jump in here. I mean, we added the comments that she had provided. I don't know if she wants to go in or just.
So basically what did happen, and I know Suzanne and Brenda have on multiple occasions in the past before I came on board, tried to contact GIC with no avail. I was able to actually get in contact with a gentleman at GIC who I've been working with really closely, and he's walked me through the entire calculations, and I will actually be speaking with him tomorrow to get our calculation for FY21. The assessment is pretty much a calculation of 12 months on your prior December bill, and then there's adjustments for increased retiree expected, increase in rates, and then they always do a prior adjustment, which is actually 2 years in arrear because of the way the cycle works. So we do know how that calculation is put together now, but I wasn't aware that this was an issue until it was actually brought to me on the audit. So while they were actually going through the audit process, I was able to get this, but at the time of the audit, we did not have the backup for the particular calculations for FY19 and 20, but we do have those on hand now, and we'll have those going forward before we pay the assessment.
Thank you, Tanya.
Okay. All right, the next comment is a repeat from the prior year in terms of updating the chart of accounts and the district's general ledger. I know we've had multiple conversations about that, and clearly that wasn't as much of a priority over the past few years as, you know, other things that Tanya's been working on. So I know the goal is to update that going forward, which will just make things clearer and kind of streamline the end-of-year reporting process. All right, so comment number 2.
I have a question about that.
Yep.
Do you think it's possible to map a valid chart of accounts to our existing one, or is it going to mean a new accounting system?
It'll be in the same accounting system. It'll just be a new chart of accounts. So, you know, there will be some kind of crosswalk, I'm assuming, and Tanya, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but between the old account and what the new account is, so you know if it was charged to this account before, it's going to be charged to this new account number now, which will have the right structure to it. Because right now, a lot of the accounts weren't set up properly, so, you know, they don't make sense in terms of how things should be reported. So.
Go ahead,
Do
Tanya.
you want me to comment real quick on that?
Sure.
So I was involved with the new chart of accounts when I was in town before, and just like Tammy said, there will be a crosswalk between the old and the new accounts, and I will be using the end of year reporting structure that's required by the state to actually create those accounts. So we will be compliant with DESI and UMIS, and it will make it much easier to prepare our end of year report moving forward once we get that in place. And that's one of my goals after we get this budget passed this year, is to start working on the chart of accounts. But like Tammy said, unfortunately, we've had bigger priorities on top of that. So, but it is on the chopping block before FY21.
Okay. Comment number 2 was a repeat from the prior year, and it's what we were discussing earlier about appointing or making sure the district has a certified chief procurement officer. There's currently nobody who is certified. There obviously is someone performing that function. You know, Tanya is, but ensuring that things that should be bid are bid, you know, training, all that kind of stuff. But the district should have a certified chief procurement officer on staff. So, all right. Comment number 3 is recommendation to modify the treasurer's cash book. A few years ago, the treasurer wasn't really using a cash book, and that the cash book is really of their internal records. Think about like your personal checkbook. That's where you record everything, and at the end of the month, you reconcile that to your bank account. They would do that and then reconcile it to the general ledger. So over time, a Excel file was developed. It was really more used as a cash flow mechanism to monitor cash flows for the district. But we recommend it be modified even further to actually be a formal cash book. Most of it's there. It's not, as big of an issue as it was years ago, but it's still, a few more tweaks need to be made in order to get it to be an actual true cash book for the treasurer, so. All right. Comment number 4 has to do with improving controls over student activity funds. In March of 2017, the district had a student activity fund audit where we had made the recommendations that are noted in this comment, as well as recommended that a formal policy be adopted for student activity funds. That was, the formal policy was adopted, and we did do another audit as of 6/30/19. We still found issues with these other areas. Again, clearly not as big of a priority as some of the other things you've been working on, but still things that need to be addressed at some point here. So that is a repeat from the prior year. Comment number 5 also has to do with student activity funds. If the student activity fund has over $25,000 in annual activity, it's required to be audited externally at least every 3 years. And in the in-between years, it needs to be audited internally in accordance with the DESE guidelines. Tanya had done a review of the student activity funds as of 6/30/18, but it wasn't formally documented, and it really wasn't done in accordance with the guidelines. So subsequent to this audit, we did provide her with some files and testing forms that she can use kind of going forward to do her own formal internal audits. So that's what that comment pertains to. And that's it. Yes.
Was the recommendation to have a certified procurement officer because you found non-compliance, or is it just because?
Just because it's, yeah. Yep. No, we did not have any issues with non-compliance. That would be reported in here as well.
And then when you consider material, I gotta assume the 14,000 variance is not material in a $15 million budget?
Right.
Go ahead, Tanya.
And it stayed consistent, sorry, over that variance has stayed the same, so it's not something that's getting worse. Sorry.
So I'll comment real quickly actually on the variance of that student activity. It has to do with the fact that there has been some intermittent reporting of items for the checking account for the high school for the student activity checking in the general ledger, which does not belong in the general ledger, but I wasn't comfortable removing those line items out of the budget until we actually had got our student activities cleaned up and knew that we were on the right track. So those adjustments will be done this year, and that variance will go away. As far as the procurement officer, we're kind of in a pickle, for lack of better words with that. I have been acting as a chief procurement officer. I know 30B. I did attempt to sign up for some classes to actually become certified, but the state has education requirements for that, which obviously I didn't have a bachelor's, but there's also requirements that you have actually been a purchasing officer for X amount of years, and there's a combination of that education and years of purchasing. Even though I've been in an accounting position for quite some time, and even with the town, I was not the chief procurement officer in the town. That was actually our town administrator and some of our department heads. So we do not actually have anyone employed on our payroll right now that can meet all the requirements of the MCPPO for a chief procurement officer. So I will be talking with the state to find out how we as a district can get around that. We have multiple individuals as a team being certified, so it's something that we definitely have to work on, but we don't have anybody that meets all the qualifications right now employed in the district. But I do train here the technology department, the finance director, or not finance director, facilities director, and any of the other departments that are involved in pursuing under Chapter 30B as those issues arise. That's it.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you. That's it for me, unless anyone has any other questions.
Any questions from the school committee? No? Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Superintendents report?
No.
I'd like to start by inviting two special guests that are here tonight, Lynn Hansel and Sadie Wagenbeek from the Warwick Community School, to come up. I visited Warwick just before the holiday break. When I went into Lynn's class, I saw a math project with a lot of art integration, and I was extremely impressed and wanted to see if that student and Lynn could come here tonight and share that with the school committee. This student is also the daughter of one of our school committee members, Jess Marshall.
Lynn Hansel, as many of you know, and this is one of my students, Sadie Wagenbeek, who is currently in 6th grade, and she's been working on a math project since the early part of the year, and I don't want to say a whole lot about it because I'd like her to really present this fine work that she did this year and let her shine in the spotlight, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Hello, and thank you for having me here. I am Sadie Wagenbeek. I go to the Warwick Community School, 6th grade, and well, this project was, well, I did it mostly because last year I did the 6th grade math curriculum, so me and Miss Hansel and I, were looking for something that could extend my understanding of math and its relations with art, as well as the fact that I enjoy doing art. So Miss Hansel found these books, and we also started to work on worksheets related to this book, and as shown on the paper that's up there right now. So line designs are angles and shapes. These are mostly angles that have points on their edges or axes, and you connect the points in ways to make interesting designs, such as a curve, as shown on most of these, or a circle, kind of a web. So on most, it's just a curve. They're 100% straight lines, but just the illusion of a curve is very noticeable. But for a circle is very different because it shows no curve directly, and it mostly looks like a web, as I said before. You start with a point around the circumference. Each point is equally spaced, and you connect it using pen or string or pencil or anything really, and to every other point. And you go to the next point, and you do the same with every point that you're using until you have the web shape that is shown before you now. And after I did it on paper for a little while, I got used to making them. So we changed from paper to string and pins on a giant board. And I went from the simplest and easiest form of a line design to one of the hardest, which is a hexagon. So the first is a 90-degree angle with 27 points on each axis. They're connected, again, completely straight lines that make the illusion of a curve. The second is a square, and I divided it into fourths, which make smaller squares, and then the red pins are specifically there to be the axes and the vertices in the axes. So depending on what axis you use, it will make the curve facing a different direction. As seen, if I use this as my vertex, I will get, in dark purple, this curve facing towards the center. I use this vertex, it will be facing towards the edge. This one, it'll be facing this way, and this one, it'll be facing that way. And then on the third square is just like this circle that was shown on pencil. It is exactly the same, except for it has 18 pins in equal spacing, and I used 6 different shades of blue, and it creates a very dense and confusing web. So the fourth square is a equilateral triangle. To make the equilateral triangle, I used the circle, and I connected 3 equidistant points to make the shape of an equilateral triangle, and then I retraced it in this square. I used the corners as the different vertices, and I used shades of red for this one and made it like this. So the hexagon, I also used the circle, and there were 6 equidistant points that I connected, and then I connected each vertice to the one across from it and put pins on there, and then it's just like the equilateral triangles, just smaller, and there's 6 of them. The last square, or the 6th square, was kind of simple, but still really fun to make. It was, I used a square, just like this one, a little bit smaller, and I used, the vertices are in the corners, and it makes the illusion of a circle inside of a square connected to the square. And then I did a circle with 8 points in the same design as a circle, just a less confusing web. This was a very enjoyable and interesting project to make. It was fun and enjoyable because I got to put my art skills to work, and I got to kind of do it on my own and make it unique to me, as well as kind of not unique to line designs. And it was helped me learn more about using a protractor, a compass, and making the angles and equal spacing on the edges, and a lot of cool stuff like that. Questions?
What grade is this young lady at? She knows words I don't know.
Sadie, thank you so much for joining us this evening and giving us this very thorough explanation of how you were able to do each of those pieces. It's really magnificent work that you've completed there, so great job.
You don't like math, do you?
I kind of like that. It's just yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Sadie. It's very impressive. Thank you. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks very much for inviting me.
And thanks to Ms. Hansel for helping me out with it all.
And now you get to take it home.
Hallelujah.
That's really fantastic.
Thanks again, Sadie. I'd like to call Kevin Seaman, our new Director of Facilities, up just to introduce himself and be seen by the committee and maybe say a few words.
Good evening.
Good evening, welcome.
I was kind of hoping that that was not the act that I was going to have to follow.
Kevin, in fairness, I don't think any of us would have wanted to follow that.
It's very, very well done, and I have nothing to show. So, as John said, I'm Kevin Seaman. I'm your new Director of Facilities. I come from another district where I was in maintenance for over 11 years. I have a pretty broad knowledge of the way that things work within the mechanical side of things. I'm coming up to speed on numbers and how to execute things from an administrative standpoint. So far, I've been here 5 days. I've enjoyed each one of them. So we'll hope that that continues on, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm going to not go through the entire superintendent's report because it's very lengthy. I knew that would make people happy. I'll just pick and choose a few sections. I want to start with our Innovation Center, some exciting things happening there. Dr. Heffernan, he's going to travel to Vernon, the elementary school, on February 12th to highlight the engineering programs at PVRS. I'll be joining him. He's also going to bring along the help of 7th graders here at Pioneer that are former Vernon students, Elizabeth Brown and Mia Fowler-Shaw. So that's exciting. I know Mr. Burke is in talks with the Vernon elementary school principal about setting up some shadowing for their students to come here and shadow some of our students for the day to experience Pioneer. We have some digital arts students that had recently presented animation projects. High school engineering design students have been hard at work at designing robotic fish feeders, and we'll present them next week, next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to 9th through 11th grade students. And we have 2 UMass professors joining us that are going to be in attendance, which is very exciting. There's a press release in the part of the superintendent's report you can read. We have some middle school engineering design students gearing up to make dragster robotic cars, and middle school engineering exploration students designing their own video games using Scratch programming language. So some really neat stuff happening in the Innovation Center, which has been fantastic to have here at Pioneer. In technology news, over the last few months, the tech department has been working to improve the network security and usability. New reliable firewalls were purchased and installed, and software is brought up to date on Windows-based devices. Going into the midwinter months, we will begin the refresh of classroom teachers' devices and AV systems. Along with updated devices for the staff, we will be rolling out additional Chromebooks for student use, as well as updating some older devices to make them more user-friendly. This year, we are looking at approximately a 20% increase in student devices across the district. So we're getting closer to the one-to-one initiative that we're hoping to reach. Curriculum, the district, via curriculum coordinator Ariel LaRue, was awarded a Career and Technical Education Partnership Planning Grant for $8,800 to the Department of Ed. This grant is awarded with the goal of exploring partnerships in the community to bring more career and technical education to students at Pioneer. We are working to establish an agreement with Greenfield Community College that would allow our students to earn college credit through coursework in high school, as well as take extension electives during their junior and senior year at GCC as part of a focused pathway. Yes, Sharon?
Did you say $1,800 or
$8,800, $8,800, sorry. Students following a pathway might combine their math and science courses, including electives, with independent projects, work studies, teaching assistantships, other online or GCC electives, and receive a PVRS certificate, a portfolio of career-centered work, as well as workplace certifications and college credit when pertinent. I know Ariel is going to be presenting and attending an upcoming Curriculum and Personnel Committee next month. At Pioneer, our seniors have started receiving their acceptance letters to colleges. So far, our PVR students have been accepted to the University of Maine, Penn State, Williams College, and that would be our own Ella Botti, University of New Haven, University of Vermont, American International College, Westfield University, Norwich University, Dean College, University of New England, Keene University, and Worcester State University. So congratulations to all those seniors. I also want to thank, without having a director of facilities in place for a couple months, our custodians who continually in all our buildings go above and beyond. Over the break, we had a heating failure here. Some of you may have attended a basketball game. It was very cold that night. But they came in on the weekends. We figured out the problem, fixed the problem. But again, they just go above and beyond in everything they do. And I can't speak more highly of them. So, they deserve a lot of recognition and thanks. At Warwick Community School, coming up on January 29th, the Warwick Community School will be attending a UMass women's basketball game. This all-school field trip was organized by the women's basketball team, and all area schools were invited to attend. The students are looking forward to the event, and because of the October storm that we had, Warwick missed 3 days of school, so they're going to make up those days, 2 during February break, the 18th and 19th, and the third day on March 13th. So they hope that there will be enough snow on the ground during this time to celebrate their annual Winterfest in an attempt to make learning during vacation fun. So you can have some makeup days. In Northfield, sensory hallway was put in similar to the one at Bernardston Elementary School that was put in the fall. The Friday before vacation, NES staff worked to lay down a sensory hallway for all their students to use, along with some new footprints for the preschool students. Sensory hallway is intended to provide strategic, intentional movement opportunities for students in a playful way. These various movements help to build sensory pathways and develop motor skills such as balance, hand-eye coordination, and spatial awareness. In the sensory hallway, students will have a chance to move quickly and slowly, reach high and squat low, jump, tippy-toe, do wall push-ups, and more. Students will be able to use the sensory hallway either as a whole class or as an individual body break during the school day. Each class received a tutorial on how to use it and had the chance to try it out on the first day back from break. And I want to say special thanks to Chrissy Solda, Rosa Kessler, Chris McGuire, Carolyn Shedd, and Peter Blake for working together to install the sensory hallway over the break. So thank you very much. Bernardston Elementary School, they started the breakfast after the bell program along with a new electronic system for documenting lunch and breakfast. Students and staff have benefited greatly from the program. The electronic tracking computerized system took a little bit of getting used to, but staff is now entering students' breakfast and lunch counts daily. Bernardston also celebrated veterans with a whole school assembly to show their thanks. Local veterans came to share their experiences in the armed forces with our students. Various classrooms presented our veterans with gifts of appreciation for all they have done for our country. Ms. Snedeker prepared our students with various patriotic songs that everyone sang as part of our many thanks. The veterans did express that it was one of the best thanks they have received from students, and Bernardston Elementary School is very proud to hear those words. Principal Carrier also worked with the American Heart Association to combine our turkey trot with a heart health event, and as a result, she'll be able to apply for the Heart Healthy Grant for $3,500 to go towards our PE program. Also, the process for the potential sixth grade move to Pioneer Middle School is underway in order to gather input from all stakeholders and possibly bring in the sixth grade up to Pioneer. We're in the process of writing a survey to be administered to parents, students, and faculty across the district. We plan to hold 2 public hearings on January 30th for faculty and staff at 4 and at 6:30 for the public. During these forums, we will discuss the potential financial, curricular, extracurricular, and social benefits and/or drawbacks to adding the sixth grade to the middle school. Research into other districts who currently run 6 through 12 schools will be presented at the forums as well. A transparent process that engages the community is in line with the expectations of the Mass Department of Education and will help assure a thoughtful decision is made. And lastly, I have attached my superintendent goals, and I will be presenting a brief progress report on my goals to the school committee in March. Thanks. Yes.
Those meetings on January 30th, where are they going?
They're going to be here in the library at Pioneer. Yep, here in the library in Pioneer. We'll be sending out multiple notices to everybody.
All right. Tanya?
I'm here. So I'll just do a brief update on what I've been doing in the finance department. Nothing new. We're obviously working on a budget still. I just wrapped up the athletic, insurance, and facilities budgets today with the help of our athletic director, our payroll and benefits coordinator, as well as our new director of facilities, Kevin Seaman. I want to thank all the administrative staff. It has been a very good collaborative effort in putting this budget together thus far, and I feel like we've done a really wonderful job in being able to continue to service our students as well as listening to the town's concerns, the financial concerns as well. So as that continues to culminate, we're hoping that we can satisfy all parties and keep the education where we like to keep it at Pioneer. As John mentioned, lots of good things going on with our school lunch, and I will have the director of food services speak to our school lunch report shortly, and he has further update on everything going on in our food services department. As I mentioned before, in the audit, after budget season, I would like to start on our new chart of accounts. I did plan on doing that last year, but with our budget season ending up going into August with our multiple amendments and votes that needed to happen, that's why that didn't get done before FY20. And the other thing, I had started working with the elementary schools to create a more electronic record-keeping system for the student activity forms and stuff that they now are required to keep under our new student activity policy. So I plan to go back to that and get them fully up and running with having their field trip forms and all that electronic, so they can keep those records all together and they're accessible by all parties at all times to allow for a better review process of those to continue to happen. And just a comment too, I'm not going to go into extensive details because we have the district responses to the audits on the student activities, but we have certainly made great strides in that, and we continue to make things better. We have some recommendations from the auditors on the student activity report to add a few things to the policy that we did, so the policy subcommittee does have that, and hopefully we'll be working on that shortly. As John mentioned, we are going to be doing more collaboration in Vernon, hopefully increasing our revenue with them next year, with increased students into the school. So the collaboration with the technology department, and hopefully setting up a shadowing system where the students can actually come spend a day at Pioneer with a student that has similar interests so that they can spend more time than just coming to the school for a tech night. Something that actually my son was able to do here as he's going to high school next year. It was a very positive experience, and I thought that might be a good way for us to have more collaboration in Vernon. To go back really quickly to the school lunch again, and again, I will speak more to this, but the public concern of where we are with our school lunch. The school lunch's goal is not to make money, but to fund itself. Any special revenue fund or revolving fund is not necessarily to, make a profit per se, but we do plan on breaking even or even coming out ahead this year with our school lunch. We have actually revised the school lunch report. I found an error in the way that we were calculating our revenue, and it hasn't been reconciled to the general ledger at this point in time, so you should have an updated school lunch report in front of you that shows a surplus of about $13,000. Mike and I are going to continue to collaborate and put together an actual projection for the rest of the year like we did last year, but I wanted to get that breakfast after the bell program in place and have a better idea of where our revenues are actually going to be in the months ahead. So that's my updated report. Does anyone have any questions on that or the accounts payable that you have in front of you?
People are just looking for the documents, Tanya.
I know Joanne said that she stapled all of the financial stuff together because the packet was so large and it was in the back, I think, of all your documents. I'm not sure where the revenue expenditure was, but she did say that she stapled them all together and she didn't come place. The accounts payable report should just be one large document that you guys would email ahead of time. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on that specifically. Before I move on to the revenues and expenditures.
All right. Are there any questions for Tanya thus far? None? Okay, go ahead, Tanya. No questions thus far.
I'm not sure what order Joanne has them in, but I will start with the revenue report. The first thing, I'll wait till everyone has their revenue ready, just let me know when you guys are good.
Should be the second to last page. Everyone good on this one? Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Tanya.
Okay, so I do want to point out, the bond proceeds now has netted out to zero. So all of the funds that we were to receive to reissue the bonds for this year, have been netted out to the actual payments that we do this year. So that was a question that a couple of school committee members had last year, or last month, I mean. And I did advise that that would be completed out and zeroed out in December. So that has been completed. The next line down is our tuition from Vernon. You'll note that there's not a payment recorded as of the time of this report, but we did receive our first portion of our tuition from Vernon, which is 75% of the tuition, and the remainder comes in June, so the remaining 25%. So you'll see that noted on the next revenue report that did get entered in today. We received the check around Christmas time, so there was a delay in getting that process into the system. Town assessments are where they're supposed to be. You can see we received a little more than we expected again with our interest. Our Medicaid is on track. That's kind of, it comes in different portions. We've got another $25,000 coming in, or has already come in the last couple of days, so we're on track with how those come in throughout the year. We should have an updated number on our transportation that we're going to be receiving this year shortly, so I'll update you guys when I know what that revenue is going to look like. Chapter 70, again, that has been rectified. As I mentioned, we had quite a few issues just because we had the advance last year, we had this deficit bond, they overpaid us, etc. So I've been tracking what we should have been getting versus what we've been getting. And in a final conversation I had with Lisa from DOR last week, we are all reconciled and everything's good in both of our systems moving forward. So hopefully we won't have any issues again, because it's kind of complex trying to track what the state is doing versus what they're trying to do. Miscellaneous income, we've just had some refunds of things from prior years, et cetera, that make up that small $900 there. Our charter school reimbursement is on track. Those numbers were updated in December, but no real major changes for us. The changes that we did see pretty much net out between the charter and the choice, so nothing to be worried about with our revenue budget that we have in place now. Any questions on the revenue report? Pretty straightforward. Nothing exciting.
No questions yet, Tanya.
Okay. Moving on to there is an expenditure report by category. Again, that's just informational purposes. So you guys can see that all the transfers have been done and our budget is still whole. Going through the expenditure report, you guys will notice there are some items that are in the negative. The first one sorry, my computer wants to update on me. The first one I want to point out is the administrative assistant at Bernardston on page 2. That's currently reading at negative $545. I have not done any transfers for this evening, vote or not vote, because we have a PVRSD contract. There's a negotiation, not negotiation, it's waiting to be put into place. And we also have the new facilities director, so the other items that are in the negative are all within the facilities department, so we're working on reallocating some of the funds in the facilities for the rest of the year. But Kathy Laraway worked additional hours over the summer through the PRES and BES conversion, and that total is actually $1,600. So I'm just waiting to do one transfer for that whole amount once the PVRSD contract is settled and all of those numbers are completed next month, hopefully. We'll have that in place. So again, any of the other negative issues are either, pennies for rounding that we don't need to resolve, or they're in the facilities department. Kevin and I have already talked about looking at how to reallocate some of the remaining funds that are actually in the director of facilities salary from having a vacancy in that position. So we're looking to reallocate those to our facilities expenditure lines to help out in those areas. But other than that, everything is on par and looking good. There are some areas where I think we're going to have some left at the end of the year. So as we get a couple more months along the way, I'll probably be doing some projections of where our E&D might look like at the end of the year, and also working with some of the administrators and department heads to make sure that they're spending what the intent of their budget was for, as well as keeping track and making sure all of our grants are being spent. I think we're doing pretty well compared to where we were last year, so I'm happy with, how we've been able to manage the budget, and again, all of the staff has been wonderful. We have very good and open communications, and it allows us to stay on top of these things.
Any questions regarding the expenditure report? All right, no questions yet, Tanya.
I do want to make, one more response actually to one of the public comments, just so that the proper information is out there. The number of $8,000 or $9,000 per student has been thrown around for our central administration, by the Warwick Task Force. And I just want to clarify that our true central office budget, which is the actual salaries of our central office administration, is actually $700 per student. And if you include all of our supplies and stuff, it's only $1,500. That includes things like our overseer, our debt that we're paying back for, and all of those other items. The $8,800 that's being spoke about are all the other costs that attribute to the per pupil cost that include transportation, insurance, retirement costs, special ed costs, and so forth. So I just wanted to put that out there because I feel like, as we're talking about making efficiencies and different things, I wanted to make sure that that was accurate.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
And that is all I have this evening. Like I said, I did not prepare any budget transfers because I'd like to wait until that PVRSD contract is done, and I have a chance to speak with Kevin more about what we're doing with the facilities fund, so I'll bring those to the February meeting.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Let's see. Next. Do you want to keep going down the line, Tanya?
So Mike Honorato, our food service director, is actually there to speak about the lunch report.
I couldn't see him. He was directly behind someone else. Sorry, Mike.
I wanted to give him a chance to talk about that and kind of fill you guys in on where the school lunch is right now.
So, Tanya, there's a question about which lunch report is accurate, the one in the large packet or the individual one?
So the individual packet is the one that was updated, Mike and I actually worked on it this evening, together to get that accurate, so I'll manage to speak a little bit more. And again, before he starts that, the reason for the change is because the way we were reporting before is the accrual basis, but in order to actually reconcile with the general ledger, we are accruing cash basis until the end of the year. So that's why there's a variation in the report you had before and what we're presenting now.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, good evening, everyone. So we'll start off, one of the things that Superintendent Schedule had brought up about Bernardston. Across the district, we started the Breakfast After the Bell program. It's been implemented at our elementary schools. And the program today has almost tripled our daily breakfast participation district-wide, including Pioneer. We're looking to, I'm looking to work with administration here at Pioneer to get that program up and started here at the school. One of the ways it's going to be, we're going to be able to do this is I applied for and we received a $5,000 grant for Breakfast After the Bell implementation. That's going to go to it'll provide the tools to our kitchen to be able to better implement this program. Future grant opportunities that I'm looking into is over the summer, we'll have an opportunity to apply for, it's called a Fresh Fruits and Vegetable Program grant. It's from the USDA. And for elementary schools, what it does is it provides a specific amount of funding to provide snacks, either in the morning or in the afternoon, several days a week to the students at that school. And a second one is something I'll work with Kevin, our new facilities director, is an equipment grant. It's usually a one-time grant, but we've never applied for it here at Pioneer, and I think it's something that we should do, and we can't take advantage of. We started using, just this week, we started to do some grab-and-go items at Pioneer. We started off nice and slow with just a salad, and next week we want to go ahead and start to introduce bento boxes. what we want to do is try to increase participation here at Pioneer. Participation is up greatly from last year, but it can always improve. The one thing that we have less students than we did last year. So trying to create the same amount of revenue or more is difficult. The only way to do that is to increase participation. The only way to increase participation is to provide items that interest the students, variations. The ID card scanners at the elementary schools, the system is working out. The amount of telephone calls that I have to answer from parents with questions is reduced greatly. So everything, all deposits are going in on time, all lunches are being calculated on time, and for those parents that do use the online payment portal, even if just to view their student's balance or if they're actually eating lunch, it's up to the minute, and that's worked out well. Food establishment permits. Across our schools, we're lapsed for a couple of years with actually having permits to be able to serve food from the Board of Health in our schools. So we've gone ahead and taken care of that issue. I'm just waiting to hear back from the Warwick Board of Health, and we'll get that set up there as well. And to tie that in, for the food safety at our schools, I'm compiling a list of specific certifications that each one of our food service staff members need to have, and to make sure, and I want to make sure that I'm able to make sure they receive that training and certification that they need. Massachusetts School Buying Group. So for food service, we are moving away from using CES as a buying group. There is another buying group. It's called the Massachusetts Buying Group. They have 16, I think, 250,000 students, $16 million of purchase power, and many of our peers, different districts that are part of the CES here in Franklin County, are switching over to that for their food service needs. It should help us next year. I've taken a look at some of their agreed upon pricing from bids they have in place this year, and it's much better than the prices that we're paying now. Free and reduced populations. Our free and reduced students make up 36% of our total enrollment. Each month I've been rerunning direct certifications through the DESE website. The reason that I do this is every once in a while people fall on hardship. Some people wind up having SNAP benefits that didn't have it the month before, and so on and so forth. And all of those students that each month, which is usually just 2 or 3, get added to our they receive free and reduced status, and that'll last them for the rest of the year. And those are students that do need it. Another good part about that is those students may come from families where they're not able to afford to have school lunch, and so therefore they're not participating. This way, it's better participation for us, and we're making sure that these children are eating. One other thing that I think is on the agenda for later is an MOU with Greenfield Commonwealth Virtual Schools. Mr. Schedule, do we want to wait till later to discuss that?
Is everyone in agreement of moving it out?
Do we want to discuss that?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So I was contacted in late November by an individual, Steve Haddad, from Greenfield Commonwealth Virtual Schools. They're based in Greenfield. And they are renting space in Leiden at the old school. And he asked if we would be able to provide satellite meals for that school from anywhere from 2 to 11 students a day. I had discussions with our food service staff and the administrators over at Bernardston because I was under the impression that Pearl Road's meals used to be satellited there as well. We are able to do it. We were able to come up with an agreement that is beneficial for not only the Greenfield Commonwealth Virtual Schools, but for us as well. What we do is similar to what we do at our other satellite schools and what we had done at Pearl Roads. They'll call in an order for how many lunches they need that day, anywhere from 2 to 11, and they come and they pick it up. So we're not paying for transportation. We're not paying to actually serve it. We are providing 5 extra meals a day, and we will be invoicing them. For the time being, we'll be invoicing them at the end of each month for the meals they receive and whatever supplies that we purchase for them, with hopes that we'd like to try to, I'm working with DESE, with Kristen Webb from DESE, to try to see if we can bring them under our district agreement, because apparently many of the students are free and reduced students, and it'd be not only helpful for them to be able to use some of those monies that were reimbursed to pay for those lunches, but it also helps our participation, our percentage of free and reduced enrollment. Like I said, we're at 36%. At 40% free and reduced enrollment, things change. Reimbursement rates change. There's changes that happen with even our technology department. So that's always a goal, and I think that eventually we can get there. Does anyone have any questions about this agreement and how we're planning on serving and how we're serving the Greenfield Commonwealth?
I didn't hear you mention the cost per student.
The cost per student in the MOU, Greenfield Commonwealth Schools, they had an agreement with Greenfield Public Schools. They had a space set up and ready to be leased and everything else in downtown Greenfield, but for some reason that fell through. So what they did is the same agreement that they were going to have with Greenfield Public Schools, they forwarded to me to look at, and within that agreement, the cost per lunch that they'll be paying us will be $4.50 per lunch, and we charge $3 for our lunches, and $3 for breakfast, and we charge $2 for breakfast. So is it a financial windfall? No, but another $1,000 or $2,000 this year for Bernardston, it only helps.
Providing meals.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Can we take a vote out this, can we? Yeah, we can.
So you did a motion?
Yes, and just so everyone is aware, Russell did review this MOU prior to it coming to the table.
Right.
There.
Our legal counsel did review this MOU prior to it coming to the full school committee. Go ahead, David.
Did I hear 5 meals?
Five.
Like 5 breakfasts?
Anywhere between 2 and 11 students per day. They operate 4 days a week.
Chance that staff would like to?
Not yet. We did talk about that, and I'd like to be able to set that up. But the first things first, we want to make sure that we're able to iron out all the bugs.
As long as we're not losing money on each meal, this probably makes sense.
We're not losing money each meal. Each meal that we serve costs us $1.35. We are not serving it. We are not transporting it. We're just preparing the meals, boxing them up. Someone drives over. That's on the Greenfield Commonwealth's payroll. They pick them up on their payroll, bring them back, and serve them on their payroll.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Are we ready for a motion or no?
Did you have a question, Abby?
I did. Motion to be able to discuss further, though, I can't.
Go ahead.
I was speaking with a community member in Leiden the other day, and she had a concern about this, the serving aspect, which of course doesn't fall under us, but in terms of the fact that that building has been repurposed, are they're going to be getting the same meals that are being served at Bernardston Elementary School?
Correct.
Correct? So when Pearl Roads was open, those meals had to be reheated up there and all of that.
That's a great
How
question.
is that going to work?
That's a great question. So, by health code, there's a specific amount of time and time that you have between an item being cooked to its proper internal temperature, which for us, for the most part, is 165 degrees for at least 15 seconds, because we have to make sure we're not going to get anyone sick. When they leave when they leave Bernardston, they go into what's called a hot box. So it's an insulated thermal bag that can keep something warm for up to 8 hours, of hold temperature above 135 degrees for up to 8 hours. It gets delivered that 10, 15-minute drive, 20 if someone doesn't know where they're going like me. But once it arrives there, they serve it immediately. So in essence, we have they have up to 2 hours from the time it is cooked right to its where it needs to be before it has to be either reheated, chilled, or discarded. So within 30 minutes, the meals are already consumed. And on that question, just to follow up on that, I've already worked it out with the Greenfield Commonwealth Schools that I'll provide training and testing for their Serve Safe certifications, and we'll invoice them, and it'll be more revenue for Bernardston.
Go ahead.
And they are providing all the containers, is that correct?
They're providing all the containers.
Transport containers?
Yes.
Transport of the food?
Mhm. They've already purchased those, and they have those. Everything that they cannot provide, where it may be easier for us to purchase, such as disposable spoons, disposable forks, so on and so forth. With part of our agreement is that we can provide some of those items at a cost plus. So whatever our cost is, plus administrative fees. So again, it's a further benefit for Bernardston.
Any other questions? None? Okay. Go.
I'm like to make a motion that we adopt these Greenfield Commonwealth Virtual School MOU for the meals that we'll provide.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay. All in favor. All right, no opposed. Thank you, Mike.
All right.
Anything else?
Yes, absolutely. So if you pull up the 2-page lunch report that was put together and put on your desk, and if anyone from the audience needs some, there's some right up here for you. These are with the updates that Tanya had spoke of. So I went ahead and printed out November's and December's so we could see what the difference was in that. And I'd just like to walk you through this real quickly so we all have an understanding of exactly where we are, what the vision is, and what our actual goal point is. So as we take a peek at November, the closing balance, 3/4 of the way down to the page, if we scroll all the way to the right, we see that the closing balance last month was $20,434.27 The goal my goal at the end of the year is to make sure that closing balance number is enough to pay the summer salaries of all of our food service staff. That is it. And I believe that number, and I'm sure Tanya can correct me on this, is somewhere around $15,000 or so. So at the end of the year, if that number right there is $15,000, then we have paid for our school lunch program. That is our goal, and that's where we want to be. So if we jump ahead to December's, some of the numbers for December's are a bit off. That's because we only had 12 operating days, but we still paid our staff for an entire month. So our largest cost is labor. Just like any other business, the school district, our highest cost is labor. So we paid individuals for 4 weeks, and well, we were only open for 2. So you'll see that some of those numbers are negative. At Bernardston, on our equipment, you'll see $4,285.90. Before I arrived in August, there was some work done to a freezer, a walk-in freezer, which really did need work done to it. That cost might have been a little bit exorbitant, but it's something that we still have to pay. We're still responsible for. So that's why you'll see the net profit loss for Bernardston for that month at negative $4,000. That's because we had to pay for that equipment repair. In past years, equipment repair, propane, fuel, so on and so forth, that never fell under the school lunch budget. So when we look at this budget and to where we are already this year, we have been absorbing the cost to repair our equipment, the cost to take care of that freezer, the $1,500 to take care of the ice machine here at the high school, or at Pioneer, sorry. So those costs we are absorbing as a lunch program. They're not going to the facilities budget anymore. So even understanding that, the goal, and we are on track, we're on perfect track to be able to make sure that we finish off the year at 0 or above. Obviously, at the end of the year, if there's any money left over in the school lunch program account, there's specific guidelines that Desi says we have to follow, so it winds up in an interest-bearing account for however long until we need it again. But I just wanted to bring that information up. I wanted to make sure everyone understood it.
I guess I want to test my understanding. I'm looking at the December lunch report, and
Okay.
across the top it says opening balance. And so we started, am I reading this right? Did we start with?
The closing balance from November is on the top.
Yep.
Well, what was the opening balance on July 1?
0,
Was it?
yes.
So,
Every year it has to be zeroed out. That's, has to happen. It had,
when I took the total revenue year-to-date, was 20,100 blah blah, and subtracted total expenses year-to-date, 26,000, I get to the net profit and loss, and it says we lost $6,450 so far. And if that trend continues,
that is for the month of December. So like I
Alright.
explained, for the month of December, we played our entire staff for 4 weeks.
but year-to-date, we have a $13,900 profit?
The closing balance,
Correct.
go ahead, Tanya.
Go ahead, Tanya.
So these school lunch reports are done as a cumulative report as well as a monthly. So the net profit and loss that you're seeing specifically on this report of the negative 6,000 is just attainable in
Absolutely.
December. Then you add your beginning balance plus that, and it's 13,977.45. And as Mike stated, the main reason for the loss this month is half a month of operating, plus we had bills come in for work that we've done at the beginning of the school year that we were responsible for. So again, you can see how having a cash basis system, which we are, it's actually a modified cash basis, we do accrual at the end of the year. That's how that affects this. So had those been paid back in, say, September, you would have seen that loss specifically back in the month of September. But we are on track, and as Mike said, we have to cover $15,775.91 of summer salaries at the end of the year. What happened at the end of FY19 was that we did have summer salaries that weren't completely covered by the school lunch program of about $18,000. We had to supplement that with the school lunch subsidy that had been budgeted in the general fund, but we only used $13,000 of the $25,000 we had budgeted.
Okay.
So I'm really sorry for being so dense and not being able to understand this, but, and I heard a lot of words, but is the answer yes? Year-to-date, $13,983 profit?
Correct.
Thank you.
If you net out, and I don't want to confuse anybody or whatever, but.
Just let it go.
Hold
on.
Let it go.
Tanya, I think we're all set. We're all
set.
No.
We're breaking out the summer salaries over the 10 months that we're operational. So breaking that out over the entire school.
I object. She cannot run this meeting.
Still leaves us with an almost $8,000 profit.
Hold on
Okay,
one
Tanya, we're all
second.
set. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else, Mike, that you would like to share with us this evening? Okay, thank you so much.
All right.
All
Thanks,
right,
Mike.
thank you. All right, we signed the warrants. On to the subcommittee report, so negotiation.
Can I just say one thing, sorry,
Sure.
before we move on? Mike, I just wanted to appreciate your initiative around the new things that you're doing. And also just, it's such a relief to see people keeping close track and to see an accounting of the program. So for you and Tanya, I just express my thanks.
Yes. Okay.
Jackie, I know I'm out of order, but have we always put like equipment repairs like that toward the lunch program?
No.
I don't think so. So how can we compare should be charged to a different account, not to the lunch program, in my opinion. What?
So, Tanya, there was a question regarding why the change that it is now being charged to the lunch program for equipment.
What we're trying to do in our transparency and getting things in line with how they're supposed to be is we're trying to make sure that anything that is specific to the operation of the food service program is actually being covered by those costs. And by doing so allows us to really understand what it takes to run the school lunch program. So by not having those costs in the school lunch, it's really hard for us to say, what does it cost for us to maintain that school lunch program? Because we wouldn't have repairs to freezers, we wouldn't have hood cleaning, ventilation cleaning, and stuff like that if we didn't have a cafeteria. So we're trying to get the cost in line with the revenue for revenue recognition purposes.
Thank you, Tanya.
The replacement of a stove would put you in the negative in any one of the schools, right? You had to pay $15,000 to replace a stove.
Are you able to hear that comment, Tanya?
Yeah, if we had to replace a stove, I think that would be something that would be part of a capital project, or it would be something that we would probably, and I hate to say this, but maybe we would finance that. I don't know, we haven't come across that yet. But I'm hoping that we can keep good repair and maintenance of our items so that that isn't an issue, or if it is, it's something that we can plan for in advance.
Do we have a maintenance schedule for our equipment items?
For the cafeteria, I don't think so. I know Kevin and Mike are actually working on reviewing and putting together some things that need to be done in the kitchen. So I think the two of them are going to get together and take a look at that in the near future now that he's on board.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Tanya. And I would just ask kindly moving forward, because of the technology and the disconnect in hearing, that if the school committee has comments, or if we could just sort of put the brakes on a little bit so we can navigate, so that Tanya can hear the questions, and we can also hear school committee questions. If everyone can please do that. All right, okay, all right.
Smile, Jessica.
Subcommittee, negotiations, please.
I don't have anything to report, since I don't know of anything that has happened since our November meeting.
Go ahead, Jean.
Have you received the final,
I
agreement?
can't hear.
Use your mic.
I'm sorry. I asked Pat if she'd received the final, agreement to sign for our last round of negotiations.
I haven't heard from anybody since November, so I know nothing new.
Building and grounds?
Yes, at our last meeting, we had a guest speaker in regards to the solar system, and I think that Mr. Schedule is going to introduce him, and he will speak to us tonight.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Tom Strunjo to come speak about a possible solar project here at Pioneer.
Welcome, Tom.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you. I'd like to apologize first. David Bremen was also coming from Walden Asset Group, but he had a family issue, and he actually had some larger posters for me to display with, but he had first emergencies, so he couldn't come in tonight. So I've got a couple of that hand out that you guys can hand out to a couple of them. To share.
Thank you so much.
Out in the field?
Yeah, I can share with you.
I think it's this one. Maybe it just, these go here and this in the aisle one, so the middle would be bigger. It's gonna go over the parking lot? Yeah, so cars would park under it, so these ones will be like one lane, and this will be 2 lanes. Okay. What's the name? Preserve my fancy paint job. Beater. Keep the snow off too or something.
Again, my name is Tom Sprunjo, I live in Orange, and I'm working with a couple different solar groups, and my job is basically go out and find sites and present them to different investors. And Walden Asset Group and I have been talking about finding a regional, and I've been talking to John for about 6 or 8 months now. We're in the very early stages of this year. We're looking to do about a 470 kW system between the north parking lot and the south parking lot. This will be up on a canopy system that's about 14 feet high. The south proposal would be about 440 kilowatts, and the north would be about 27,000 probably. We're looking to do a net meter, behind the meter system here. We'll feed everything directly back into the school. We're going to try to get the school to anywhere from 80 to 90% of the usage behind the meter. And we're looking to do in the vicinity of a 10 to 11.5 or 12 cent reduction, a 12% reduction in their electric bill on a yearly basis. The solar panels, again, they'll be about 14 feet high. The maintenance on it will be a little bit less for snow because some of it will be under snow cover. The benefit to the canopies also is that they're up 14 feet. Cars can still park underneath them. There won't be any loss of any parking spaces. The only thing that may be affected is some of the spaces may be for compact cars as opposed to full capacity cars. And again, it's something we're in the early stages right now with discussions with it. We've presented the committee with an MOU. The attorneys that looked over it, and there is a little bit of confusion in it where there are a couple of dates on it. One is a 60-day exclusive period, and the other one's 120. And I talked with David about that, and what the assumption was on that was that we would have 60 days to come to some sort of a term agreement with the school on what the rate would be and the layout of the array and whatnot. And then the other 120 days would be basically to go get financing for it, get the interconnection application through the process, and determine what the interconnection costs would be for our system. So all in all, I think it would have been much clearer if they just put it out as a 180-day exclusive time frame, where at that point in time, if we couldn't come to some sort of a term with the school at that point would not be obligated to us at that point in time through the exclusive period.
Go ahead. Our attorney is looking over the MOU, and he had a suggestion. I know you said that we wouldn't have to go for a procurement exemption because it wasn't school monies that we were using.
Right, you were talking about an RFP?
He questioned that, right.
Yeah.
Our attorney questioned that, so.
We're under the belief that the RFP isn't necessary because we're not asking monies from you. We're providing a service for you as a reduction.
Well, we'll remedy that between our attorney.
Sure, yeah, right.
Go ahead, Jean.
Tom, did you say it would provide about 12% of the school's electricity?
No, we'll give about a 10 to 12% reduction in your electric costs.
In the, okay.
Yeah. We're going to try to get anywhere to 90% of the usage behind the meter. Yes.
So my town's Building and Energy Committee has been working with a net meter purchase agreement that are offering 10% discount. And to me, that offers the advantage of being almost instantly available, and two, being transferable if for some reason down the road this facility didn't have the demand. The use of the building changed. So what's the advantage of this with a 10 to 12% discount and versus a net meter credit purchase agreement at 10% discount?
This would still, in essence, be a PPA also. So we're offering about.
So what's the advantage, though? I mean, without having any procurement issues, without possibly having to declare surplus property and go to bid, or not sure it fits under energy exemptions. Council can figure that out. Just wondering, there's a competing, much simpler approach. Why should we do this instead of the essentially a financial instrument?
And again, that's entirely up to the school committee and the finance committee as far as
You're
what the...
selling, man, I'm just asking you, and giving you a chance to tee this up. I was thinking you were gonna say, this will be behind your meter and you're gonna skip transmission charges, and then I was gonna answer, what are we gonna do about demand charges?
No, but you're not, but again, what, you still, whether we build this or someone, or you buy a purchase, a PPA, it's still gonna be the same benefit to you. It's just a reduction in the power. As far as doing away with the demand system, we're fronting the cost of building it, so we're giving you the 10 to 12% reduction in it, just as you would with PPA, where you're gonna get a 10% reduction. We're offering probably a 2% better reduction in your rate.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Go ahead, Pat.
I'm a little bit more practical, or I think it is anyhow. What happens with plowing snow? Because we live in a place where there's snow.
Again, the arrays are gonna have minimal posts, and the posts are about 20 feet apart. And we've done a number of these in Worcester. I think we did 9 of them in Worcester, and as far as the snow budgets, it wasn't affected by it at all.
And the snow will just fall right off the top.
There's a small pitch. The snow won't fly off. Once the panels start up in the morning, they warm up. At that, once the sun comes up, the snow will melt on it.
Oh, it melts. So it'll come down as water then?
There'll be gutters on it, on the edges.
What would the pitch be?
Generally about a 4% pitch, 4 to 5% pitch. And again, depending on what, I don't get into the design aspect of it, where the engineers will determine that.
Sharon, did you want to say something?
Yeah, but I forgot what it was. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Oh, I know, I was gonna comment on the snow removal. Because I've been watching as I go to Greenfield to do errands, I go down Elm Street, and I pass those canopies. That's what actually got me started thinking really about canopies and snow removal, because there's a lot of cars there all the time.
These are the ones at the jail?
Yeah, and it doesn't seem to be any kind of an issue to them.
Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna reference, is the Elm Street House of Corrections there. There's no, you'd think you'd see piles of ice built up around the perimeter of that, and there isn't any of that. So I don't think that you'd see any issue here because it's so close to the proximity to them.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Jess.
I have 2 questions. I wonder if there's any storage capacity for any of the electricity generated, and I wonder if there's any way to take any, if there was excess, I don't know, and utilize that at our other schools.
As far as battery backup you're talking about battery backup storage for? And again, because your usage is going to be minimal at night, it probably wouldn't be financially feasible to do the batteries. If we were feeding it back into the grid, that'd be another matter.
Other schools?
Anything? Yeah. And is there any way to take that to any of the other schools? The
This
power that's
will not be a
generated
net
here?
metering now.
Go ahead, Pat.
I notice at Northeast Utilities, which is in my backyard, there's a lot of time when those, whatever you want to call them, those panels are covered with snow. And when those are covered with snow, that's not making power. Is there, if your slope isn't enough, it's not going to come off. And we have neighbors that have them on their roof, and half the winter is covered with snow.
And again, that's the nature of solar in New England, where you get snow buildup and you have to wait for things to clear.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Do the cells generate some heat so it would help?
They do.
Yeah.
Again, once any sun does get on it, it does start to warm up a bit. And it's not that the panels are far more efficient now than they were 15, 20 years ago, where typically 20 years ago, if you had some of the cells that were covered with a leaf or some snow or whatever, then the whole panel would not function. Now, once one of the cells starts to warm, they start to generate some heat.
Any other questions? None?
I got a question.
Wait, Tanya has one, actually. And then we'll go to David. Go ahead, Tanya.
I just have one quick question, because there was a lot of numbers around the kilowatts that these would produce. What is the estimated annual production per kilowatt from this system?
Yeah, and this is going to be a 400 kW system, and it'll generate somewhere around 650 to 700,000 kilowatt hours a year.
Okay. Because our usage for the calendar year of 2019 was 784,000 kilowatts, which was actually down 100,000 kilowatts from 2018.
Well, the-
being energy efficient.
And the other thing that
happened at the high school, so I was just curious. Thanks.
one of the things that we're going to have to do some research on again is because you just recently, or you're in the process of redoing all your lighting to LED lighting. So your usage is going to come down at that point also. Your kilowatt hour usage will come down. So we're going to have to make a determination there whether we actually downsize this from 470. We're going on the usage that you've been using over the last year. So we may bring that down to about 420 or 440, I'm not sure yet.
And we'll be monitoring that kilowatt change as those lights go in too, so.
Go ahead, David.
When power's made and there isn't enough of it, we'll have to get power from the grid.
Correct.
And when we're getting power from the project you build, will we just be responsible for paying for power, or will we still be grid attached and the power that we use off of this system would also have transmission and distribution charges attached to it? Because if we open our electric bills, we see there's a generation charge. It's not even quite half the bill, or maybe it's a little more, but there's transmission of getting the electricity down the high tension wires. There's distribution charges, which are bringing the power across down the street, and those are charges on the electric bill. If we were to build our own system on the roof, and the meter was on the other side of us, Eversource was over there, the meter was here, our solar farm was here, we would essentially be saving half of the normal charges because we wouldn't be charged for distribution and transmission on electricity that was being made locally. With this project out in the parking lot, could it be in anywhere else so the question is, off of that power generated, will we only be paying for generation charges, or will we be paying transmission and distribution charges on all the power we use?
All the power that you on your electric bill that you still get now, again, we're only going to be reducing the overall total bill. It won't affect your distribution charges. And I agree with you 100% that if you actually built on the system, that would be far more beneficial for you. The problem with it would be is the school's payback on it, because it's a nonprofit entity. You would not qualify for the ITC credits, the investment tax credits. In the long run, it probably would still be beneficial if the school owned it. But one of the things you have to look at is then you've got maintenance on the system, whether an inverter goes over the next 7 or 8 years, you've got to replace that. If the panels are damaged, whether it's from a baseball coming off the fields or whatever, or rocks thrown at it. If you own it, you also have to have a liability policy on it. So there are a number of cost aspects that if the school actually owned it, the payback may be so long that it may not be beneficial for you to own it. But you're correct, as far as the distribution charges, if you actually own the system and you were behind the meter, it would greatly reduce your electric bill by more than half.
Could you fashion a deal where you did what you do, build these and structure our payment so that it was on the other side of the meter?
As far as reducing, we could still, the investors are only going to reduce it to a certain point because they look for a certain return on a yearly basis to it.
Probably no.
There has to be some benefit to them for
Yeah.
funding the money.
The only cost to this space.
Thank you.
That's essentially the cost is not there.
Right.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I was just saying, based on the meetings we had, the only cost of the school is the space. So there's not the upfront charge.
Right, there's no cost to the school for this, right?
The space for the reduction in the power price.
And what happens, you use the example of a baseball. I'm looking at this map, and we have a baseball field and a softball field that are in close proximity to those first rows.
Right,
I
we
have
have-
seen some baseballs come over. What happens if one gets broken or smashed or?
That question came up through the committee where we met with last week, and John was asking that same thing. And if for some reason a foul ball did come over and hit one of the panels, chances of it breaking are probably slim, but if it did break, we just replace it, that's all. There's no
Okay.
cost to the
No
school on
cost
that.
to the
There's no
school.
liability to the school on it at all.
Okay.
It'll protect the cars.
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. No charge for that insurance, huh?
Are there any other questions before we move along? So I think the next step would be to gain the clarification from council.
That's right.
On
The MOU.
The MOU, which we can get that, and then the subcommittee can
Yeah,
figure
and then
that
we'll-
portion out with moving forward.
That's right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Curriculum and personnel?
Before we move
Oh,
on,
go ahead.
I would very much like us to look at the competing offer, which has far fewer moving parts and would be transferable if this building ever saw its demand go way down, or that is to say, it's generated off-site, it's contractual agreement, it's the same deal we have in place at Warwick School, which is a 25% discount. This is much later in the game. This is only a 10% discount. This project proposes 10 to 12%. These net meter credits that we're being offered with a 10% discount will apply to the entire bill. Distribution, transmission, and if it happened that we bought too much, we wouldn't have to pay the contracted amount for electricity that we don't need. We could transfer it to another public entity.
Okay.
We should look at the other option.
Thanks, David. Curriculum and personnel.
Okay. We met Monday, and the superintendent attended the meeting, and the only item on the agenda was discussion of his goals for the year. We talked about the DESE recommendation that a progress report be provided to the school committee before the end of the year evaluation, and as you heard John say, the plan is for him to do that in March, at our March meeting. We only got one comment or suggestion from school committee members regarding the goals, and that one was about a possible duplication, and in the end, we thought we could endorse the goals as they are. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sue.
I know I got something this summer, Karen, we talked about it, that Department of Ed said there was a new process for, or new rubrics for the superintendent eval. Can you speak to that?
Well, I went on the DESE site prior to our recent meeting, and I saw documents from the summer of 2019 that at first glance looked a little different, but are still pretty involved. I think we can fashion an evaluation that is tied to the particular goals that our superintendent has, and maybe streamline the process a bit better that way.
Okay, so as far as you could tell, it's basically the same, pretty much?
Yes.
Okay. I have one other question.
Sure.
I believe in the past it was recommended that there be a shared school committee superintendent goal. Did you guys discuss that at all?
Yes, that revolves around the third goal that John presented. He thought that would work well as a shared goal because it has to do with investigating, which we are already doing, partnerships with other districts or other entities for increased efficiencies.
So I think that's a great idea. we haven't done that. It's a little tricky for me that we're seeing the goal in January and getting a progress report in March. I don't know, Jonathan, if you can speak to that. I mean, do we typically get them in the fall, the goals?
This is what the committee decided, so I just followed your timeline. If you want to change it next year, you can change it, but I'm just going by what the committee instructed me to do and what they want. Provided the goals, I provided a shared goal, and the timeline was set, so.
Okay, it just seems odd that it's so late in the year. I guess my preference would be for next year, or to ask MASC what's recommended. My preference would be that it be something we know about at the start of the year, next time.
Coincidentally, I'm going to a Charting the Course workshop on Saturday, and I can query some people from MASC while I'm there.
Yeah, great. Great. I applaud that goal. I think that's a great goal.
Budget subcommittee?
We've got an updated budget schedule. We've had 3 meetings. The next meeting is January 15th at 1 p.m. The following one is January 23rd. And then I believe Tanya is waiting for numbers from the state to finish up at before the last meeting that's scheduled. We also have a meeting January 29th to discuss any sections not completed.
What are the times on those last two?
The last two, the January 29th is 1 o'clock and the 23rd is at 1 o'clock. Thursday, February 6th would be the school committee's vote for the FY20 proposed operating budget. And the legal hearing would be February 4th at the auditorium at 7 p.m. Tanya, John, and the staff, they've been working hard to get this budget together, which is actually making it easy for us, but not easy for us. So there's going to be some decisions that need to be made, and once all the information's in, we'll have to do that. That's all I have.
Go ahead, Jeannie.
What were those 2 February dates? And what were they for again?
Okay, so February 6th, 7 p.m. is the school committee. That's the vote for FY20 proposed operating budget. That's when we do that. And then Tuesday, February 4th is the hearing in the auditorium at 7 p.m.
So that precedes the school committee.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the extra.
Hold on one second. Go ahead, Tanya. Oh, something's wrong with your sound. We can't hear you.
Sorry, I had myself muted.
Okay.
Typically, the public hearing is held in the studio, which I think we ended up doing last year, because the auditorium wasn't a good venue for that with the lighting and the sound and stuff, so I don't know with the new equipment that's being put in the auditorium, if we want to do it in the auditorium again, or if we want to keep it in the Kiva in a more, I don't know, a closer environment. I felt like it was easier to do it in there, so I don't know if you guys want to decide on that now, or if we can talk about it at the budget subcommittee meeting next week.
I would say budget subcommittee can figure out the space. Are you all set with your dates, Jeannie?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all right.
Can I just
Go ahead, Sue.
Mike, would you be willing to send out a memo to the whole committee with your dates?
I'll have it emailed out to everybody.
Great,
That's
thank
fine.
you.
I'll the same format.
Okay, thank you.
Policy subcommittee?
So we met on Tuesday, and I think that we have completed the user fee, gate fee policy. So that should be coming to everyone very soon. John, that didn't get printed out to get handed out tonight, right? No. It didn't, okay. So that'll be coming to all of you soon, and you can look it over, and hopefully we'll be able to vote on that at our next meeting, and then that'll be done. We're waiting on just a couple small things, and then we can start figuring out working with MASC to update policies on a larger scale and get ourselves back on track. And we are meeting 23rd, I think.
I've got it here.
Yeah, I do too.
We have it.
Yeah, we're meeting on
The 23rd.
The 23rd at 4:30.
Legal counsel was reviewing the contract that MASC had provided to us for their services, and there was some questions that they had, and so we are waiting for some clarity around that.
Great.
And as soon as legal counsel is satisfied with the agreement, then we'll bring it forward.
Perfect.
And the district agreement.
We've got the final copy from the attorney yesterday or Tuesday. So it's going to go to the subcommittee. I got to set that meeting up hopefully for this Tuesday, the 14th at 4:30 here at PVRS. I've just got to get it posted, and then we'll have our fresh copy of it.
What time is that?
4:30 here. The 14th, Tuesday.
That was a February or January?
January. And we're going to get, as soon as the committee has reviewed it and gone over it, we're going to get it right out to the full committee through email, so you'll get it a couple of weeks before the February meeting in time for you to review it. And then we'll discuss it and perhaps vote on it in February.
Okay. Under new business, we moved Melanson and Heath. We've already completed the MOU. And next on the agenda is discussion and vote on having kindergarten and grade 1 of Warwick Community School students attend Northfield Elementary next year. Go ahead, Jean.
Are we going to be doing discussion of this form that's is positions and employees for each school?
So under personnel on the agenda on the second page, it talks about staff changes.
Oh, this is necessarily shows staff. It just gives names and the positions.
This isn't changes.
Yeah, but we have staff changes. This doesn't indicate any staff.
Well, if there's,
any of these are staff.
so if there are staff changes, John will talk about them.
Oh,
That's
okay.
why they're on the agenda, and what is listed on that document is what committee members had requested so that they know who is staffed at every school and what their position is.
All right, but I have another question.
Sure.
Tanya is listed under Bernardston. Why is she not under Central Rock?
Can we do that during that?
Well, yeah. Just wasn't clear. It wasn't clear what we were gonna do.
Well, we could address it when we get to that item.
It's just something to think about.
Yeah.
When we get to staff changes, we can review that document. All right, back to new business number 3. Discussion and vote on having kindergarten and grade 1 Warwick Community School students attend NES next year.
So I provided a document with the title Warwick Potential Kindergarten First Grade Enrollment for next year. So right now, as far as kindergarten, there's 2 known Warwick children eligible to enroll based on last year's census, but we don't know if they're going to actually enroll. And first grade, we have 1 Warwick student currently enrolled at Northfield who would return to Warwick, and then 1 current Warwick student at Northfield Elementary by choice, and her mother has confirmed that she would like to keep that child in Northfield Elementary. So I don't recommend having a preschool, first kindergarten, or first grade. We just don't have the enrollment numbers.
Okay. Go ahead, Jess.
Do you have any preschool numbers?
I did ask Chris McGuire to come, and I believe that the census, is Chris here?
Yes.
Okay. I believe there were 5 potential, possibly 5th grade students, preschool students of that age, but I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yes, we base it on the school, the town street list, and we don't know exactly how many of those potential preschoolers would come. There are, of 4-year-olds in Warwick, there's like 5. And we don't know. Generally speaking, you can't count on a street list to have all those kids come. The other thing I'd like to say about preschool is that we're very dependent on people paying tuition. They have to be able to, it has to sustain itself. We used to get grants. This is the last year that we got the inclusive preschool grant, which gave us $33,000. This is we're not going to get that anymore. That grant has dried up. The UPK grant, which is Universal Preschool Grant, Northfield and Bernardston are eligible to get that grant, and they each get $8,700. So potentially, each preschool student could be, if they paid full tuition, would be around $6,000. That almost never happens because we use a sliding scale that the state gives us. So it's just not enough students to make it feasible because I have less money to operate with. I have less money in all my grants, and the preschool grants are drying up. So that leaves us with two Warwick, that we know of, two Warwick residents who are eligible for kindergarten and one that's eligible for first grade. So that doesn't seem economically feasible. So that's why that recommendation came about.
So are these numbers not correct?
What numbers?
Because it says first grade is 2. First, I'm looking at this form that John gave us. And under first grade for Warwick, the proposal is for 2, and there's nothing under kindergarten.
It's the other form, I think. Jeannie, are you looking at this?
You're looking, I'm sorry, you're looking at this one.
There's a narrative.
Thank you very much for correcting me.
Go ahead, Pat.
You said that there were a possibility of 4 children that were preschool eligible, is that correct?
5 4-year-olds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there any legal way that we can connect with these parents to find out
Oh,
whether
yes,
the
yes.
children
No,
cover or not?
Brenda Beck, who's the early childhood assistant, sends out postcards to everybody on the street list for all the towns.
Okay.
And then invites them to call or contact her or myself for an application. And then the process begins. And even then, there's no guarantee. We have to have the information. Are they going to be able to pay? Do they have special needs? Because that affects how much money they pay as well. So it's a tough process, and some people want very specific. They want Tuesday, Thursday after. It's very complicated, and so you don't know until everything is set up, and it's hard to set that up if you don't know what you're going to get. And preschool, if it was required, it would be a different story, but it's not really required. They want districts to take on preschools, and I agree it's an important thing, but but yes, at the same time, the money to do that is getting less and less every year. So.
Go ahead, David.
Do we have the Northfield numbers? Because if we're talking about transferring kids from Northfield, we should consider the impact at Northfield, and there's no savings if we end up needing to add another teacher.
I have 18 preschoolers for next year at Northfield. That's the count, 18.
So it'd be 23 if 5 more kids.
So it'd be 23, at the most.
18 preschoolers.
Which would become, well, how about the numbers for kindergarten and first?
Kindergarten, we're going to have two, oh no, it's one kindergarten, 23 students. Tanya, do you have something to add?
We do have numbers for 2 kindergarten classes next year at Northfield already.
Because if you've got 2
And as far as the preschool goes, and I think Chris can chime in on this, we have class capacity of 16, but that doesn't mean we can only accept 16 students, because as Chris said, a lot of your preschool students will only come for 2 or 3 days during the week. So we fill the spots with current students first, and then 4-year-olds for those preschool programs. But we have more students than we have necessarily spots, so we know that we can fill a classroom at both Northfield and Bernardston for preschool.
So we're not talking 18 full-time preschool students.
We're talking slots. There are
Okay.
slots, and for some kids, it's perfectly appropriate to go 2 half-days a week, because that's the most that they,
Okay.
you know, can stand. For some kids, they come all day, every day. And we're also legally required through special ed to provide services, not necessarily a program, for 3 and 4-year-olds who have specific needs. So all of that is taken into consideration with definitely priority given to district applicants. And certainly, we always open it up to, if there was a slot in Bernardston and there was a Warwick student, I mean, that sounds crazy, but that has happened. That could happen. Depends on what the openings are, what the slots work out. It's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle.
Sure.
You have a Tuesday,
Yep.
Thursday afternoons,
You could
but
have-
Wednesday, Friday morning,
Right.
you know.
One slot could be comprised of 3 students,
Right,
depending on their
exactly,
schedules.
exactly. It is very, in some ways, it's hard on the teachers because, you know, you have 16 slots, but you got 23 kids, you know. But we always try to prioritize it and make it work for the families in the district.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. Go ahead, Mike.
So regarding staffing, if you had the 5 students up there, you'd probably, and if you had special needs student, you could have the potential of having a requirement of having 3 staff members for preschool.
Possibly, yes.
Okay.
Right, right. And that wouldn't be economically feasible. So, yes, David.
Go ahead, David.
My question is about slots.
Mhm.
Is one kid one slot, or is that like a seat that can be time shared?
Yes, it can be time shared. Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead, Sue.
How many 3-year-olds on the street list in Warwick?
One.
One?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The advisory committee in Warwick did discuss this when we saw the proposal on the agenda. Certainly, our town, as you all know, is still really committed to trying to keep our school in our town and keep it functional. I just want to convey to this committee that the advisory committee is requesting that this not be done at this time without engaging us in more of a conversation about what's possible with different models. So I just want to convey that that is the advisory committee's perspective on this.
Okay, thank you. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Sharon.
I'm almost feeling as though you're acting as Warwick's agent, Susan, and that's really a conflict of interest here. So I really would like to keep the comments at a minimum for that committee and your being on the school committee.
Okay, sure, go right ahead.
I understand your concern, Sharon. It's an awkward position for me to be in. It is a committee that is in our current district agreement, and I am trying to finesse that the best I can.
So I think maybe a way that we could address that is if there is something that comes up with the Warwick Ed Committee, could they send us a document? Could they send us a, you know, can someone write something and send it to us so that we have it and we're prepared if those are the discussions that they're having? Or something that they could address the whole committee and share their perspective or their request?
Yeah, I'll take that back. I mean, we saw the agenda item and only got to discuss it on Tuesday, so it was a
Okay.
quick turnaround.
Okay, all right. David, did you have your hand up? No?
just to make the point that the advisory committee is a statutory committee defined in the district agreement. And its purpose is to advise the regional school committee on elementary matters.
Mhm.
So you're being advised.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
Basically, I'd like to see the same thing that happened last year coming up on budget decisions, where we voted last year at Bernardston to do the same thing, except I think we're including grade 1 this year. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to have kindergarten, grade 1, and preschool go to Northfield Elementary School next year. And that's what I'd like to be for a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Okay. And you got that? Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Mike.
We're under financial constraints, and we're starting to get the emails reflecting what the budget is going to do to some staff in our system. And in order to make adjustments, we need to do this now before we go to the budget presentation to the towns. We want to limit what happened last year with 2 or 3 outings for votes from the towns.
Okay. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Abby.
So I have a question and just and a comment as well. So my question in terms of Warwick in general, I guess, is what number of students would constitute a financially sustainable classroom? So start with that.
So, John or Tanya? Is Tanya there?
I mean, there's a certain, there's a cost to the teacher and an aide if necessary. Some of our class ranges at the other 2 elementary schools, I can give you that. 23 students, this is Bernardston numbers in the kindergarten, 18 first grade, 21,
no,
15.
Those
I don't
numbers are
think
not
having,
correct.
I don't
They're
think
18
having one
kindergartners.
potential
Yeah.
first grade student district-wide is reasonable.
No,
And
well,
yeah, and
I understand that.
Right.
I'm just asking, because this question keeps coming up, and I think that that's information that is going to be good for us as we're figuring out the future.
I'd probably say realistically, maybe 10 or more, 12 or more.
Okay.
I mean, I'm looking at these other elementary school numbers, and, the lowest is 14 in Bernardston, all the way up to 24 students. And in Northfield, I have that Northfield paper. Northfield is, 18, 23, 23, 23, 22. I don't think it's feasible to have classes that are that small moving forward. We can't do it as a district. We're talking about laying off staff in other schools to maintain classes that are extremely small. Even at the high school, we're looking at streamlining some of our classes and making those larger. We just can't sustain it.
I'm just looking for a
There's
number.
no
I don't
really
need you to
magic number,
justify
but I'd
it,
say
but-
probably 10 to 12 or more
Thank you.
at minimum.
Did you have a second part?
I did. So just on the preschool front, I have a kindergartner, so I know a lot of the preschool parents, both in Bernardston and Leiden specifically, and a couple in Northfield as well. We cut our preschool programs in half last year, and I know that the current preschool teacher at Bernardston is stretched very thin. She has 23 students. She has a completely different class every day. And I know there were kids on the waiting list and kids who are part-time in her classroom that would have liked more space. And I know Chris and Brenda do an excellent job of trying to meet everyone's needs. But looking district-wide, I know of at least one Northfield parent who would have sent her child to Warwick last year, but was told it was not an option because it wasn't. And at looking at what is best for all of the kids, and I know preschool, we don't have to have, we have kids who are interested, and if there's a way we can find, if we can find a way to educate those children, I think it's important because there are a lot of parents who would like to have access to those programs and aren't getting what they're looking for.
I saw Pat's hand up and David, and then we'll go to Sharon.
Someone stated that we had 18 kids that were going to be in pre-K next year. Is that correct? In Northfield?
So, can I get clarification, please? Is it 18 kids?
Yeah.
Or 18 slots? Because I want to make sure we're using the appropriate language.
16 slots.
Go ahead, yeah. You wanna-
So Chris can correct me, but based on my knowledge, it never is certain until we do enrollment, which happens in March or April, or maybe even May. And so just because they're age eligible, it doesn't mean their families haven't selected other options for them, private preschool, stay at home, family childcare. So because it's optional, they have complete and legitimate right to set the course for their 3 and 4-year-olds. So it is exactly uncertain. So we look at the street list, and then we open enrollment, and we strive to serve as many as we can. And so our ability to serve 24 students in Leiden and Bernardston was a way to get the service to as many students as possible. So even though some people may have wanted more, it was a way to offer a service that unfortunately relies on parent tuition, and the grant funding is dwindling. So we were trying to get the best of both worlds in terms of being able to have a viable program that runs at quite a cost and is relying heavily on a parent's ability to pay. And so that plays a huge factor in their choices that they make for their families.
Right. Renee is absolutely correct in everything that she said. I believe the 18 students are 18 students, not slots.
Okay.
But I don't have that sheet right in front of me right now. So it's always up for discussion. We can make this program. We could say, we are meeting pretty soon. We could say something like, okay, we're only going to take full-time students. That would immediately cut out many families who simply can't afford full-time. I mean, $6,000 a year is pretty cheap. If you have, I know what my daughter pays for, which is a lot more than that, private preschool.
Right, if you were to look across Franklin County to the area to which we reside in, we have several preschool options in this county, and
yes.
they are costly.
And so what we're looking at is trying to help these families get in, and that's why we have these, slots and partial placements. So, and to answer Abby's question a little bit, you have to think about how much does a teacher's salary cost?
Well, exactly.
So, and not only the salary, but then the benefits. And who's paying for that? The district pays for that. It would be very hard to build a class, if everybody paid $6,000, I mean, you might be approaching it, but that's never happened that I know of, and it seems unlikely to be going that way, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. So the rest of my question was, if we have 18 children we know are in Northfield that are eligible, and I think the number 5 was put out from being eligible children in Warwick. If they all came to Northfield, and they probably wouldn't, you aren't going to have all those kids that come, I'm sure. You'd be getting a pretty large class.
Yes, yep.
And that was my question.
Yes, that would be
a viable class for 4 and 5-year-olds?
Again, we look at that. It's in my mind, it's very doubtful, and Renee can chime in on this too, that all of those would be wanting to come full-time. So you may have 23 students, but as David was saying, it's like a timeshare. We just figure out who's coming, half days, full days, 3 days a week, 2 days a week. And actually, Brenda did a count one time. The Tuesday, Thursday slot is not going to cheat you that much given Monday holidays. it breaks out about even between Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesday and Thursday. So, so yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. So,
All right. David, then over to Sharon, then over to Mike.
If it's this committee's intention to close Warwick, then this is the beginning of that road. We voted twice not to, but this is a cut on Warwick's potential survival. And I wonder why we would close the best facility, why we would close the elementary school with the best educational outcomes and educational attainment. We should be looking at that, not just money, not just efficiency. If we're going to transport kids from Warwick, that bus could go the other direction, and we could load balance. I remember last year, over my objections, a kindergarten class of 23 at Northfield was split. We ended up with a 12 and 12 in Northfield. We don't need a 12 and 12 in Northfield. We got space, we've got proven, attained educational outcomes that are far superior to Northfield's. Look at the data. We should look at the data. We shouldn't be making this decision in a vacuum. Let's recruit. There'd be no change in the transportation cost, and there wouldn't be a lawsuit. There wouldn't be a lawsuit. There wouldn't be delay. There wouldn't be acrimony. We should also be thinking about what Warwick proposed, which was a different way to address education. It was blended learning. This is an opportunity to experiment with something and not to plod one foot in front of the other in a way that is already proven, doesn't have a history, or doesn't have a future. We cannot keep going the way we're going. We should be looking at other things. Mahar, Gil Montague are both looking for superintendents. We're looking for or should be looking for a business manager. We should be looking to save in central office and aggregate there. There's other ways that we could meet our financial goal. Participating in the Gil Montague Pioneer process, the major pitch is we won't have to continue to cut programs and cut course offerings and cut opportunities for students, but maybe we can even bring them back. Let's look for ways to bring stuff back and not cut and cut and cut. This may become necessary, but I don't think we need to decide it now. We haven't looked at our options.
John, did you want to make a comment?
I just wanted to make just a clarifying comment in regards to what you said about looking at the data. So the data in one of my earlier reports, actually Northfield Elementary School, and all the schools are wonderful, scored the highest out of the elementary schools as far as the MCAS results. We are looking at different options with school districts. And we're looking at the budget, we're looking at cutting staff everywhere. And I have a statement I'd like to read, and I'm hoping this is the appropriate time. This statement was discussed and unanimously agreed upon and written by our entire administration team, consisting of all 4 school principals, a special ed director, the curriculum coordinator, grants manager, and a director of finance. Our administration team recommends that Warwick Community School merge with the Northfield Elementary School for the fall of 2020, as we feel it is in the best interest of our student body, teaching faculty, families, and the district as a whole. The intention in closing the school is to be able to provide a robust education for all of our students, pre-K through 12. PVRSD has been experiencing yearly reductions in the staffing and programming, resulting in larger class sizes and missed opportunities for students. While some of the staffing reductions have been based on declining enrollment, others have been due to the budget constraints that threaten to undercut what our district can provide. The consolidation would help us to maintain programs and help our remaining schools to be operational and sustainable. Our goal is to maintain a level service throughout this district. While we recognize the loss to the community of Warwick, we also consider that Warwick is part of us. And with this in mind, we believe it is essential for the survival of our district, and the closure of the school is our recommendation to the school committee at this time.
Okay. So Sharon's next, and then we'll go to Jeannie, because she was waiting after David, so.
Thank you for bring that to our attention, I do want to say, that Warwick has some wonderful students and some good staff. However, so does the rest of the schools in this district. So I would like us all to remember that we've got some excellent students in every one of these schools and excellent teachers that are bringing them to success.
Go ahead, Jeannie.
David, I understand where you're coming from, but as I heard the earliest sixth grader from the Warwick Elementary School talk about this wonderful math program that her innovative teacher was able to find for her, and then it sounds like it applied to more than just Sadie. I was thinking how sad that this couldn't have been shared on a larger basis with the Northfield Elementary School, with that whole sixth grade. So you can look at it both ways. If we have all these innovative, wonderful programs going on at one school, then that means that if those students are combined, then those teachers can bring those qualities to a much larger number.
Go ahead, Mike.
Can I rescind my motion and make a new motion?
Can you withdraw it?
I think it's
Second is by Sharon. Yes, and Sharon or Seth?
Seth did.
So you want to rescind that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I'll rescind my second.
Okay. Now I can make my new motion. Is that?
Hold on, let Ann
Yeah.
get this.
Before you do that, can I just ask a quick question about Jonathan's statement? Who was it again? The admin team?
It was all four principals. Our special ed director, Chris McGuire, sitting here, curriculum coordinator, grants manager, Ariel LaRoe, and Tanya was involved with the conversation.
Unanimous?
It was unanimous.
And you also?
And myself.
Thank you.
We discussed this, we agreed upon it, and we wrote the statement together. As an admin team, we've been having these discussions all year, and what's putting all of our students, what's best for all of our students and staff.
I was just wondering how long you've been holding it. When did you vote?
We discussed this and wrote this yesterday at our admin meeting.
So I just to piggyback what Sharon said, we all wear a variety of hats in the communities in which we reside and in which we are elected from. I always want to remind myself, because I'm a parent and I'm a school committee member, my role here is what's best for the entire district. We have excellent staff, we have excellent administration, we have wonderful communities that contribute to that, and I'm always reminding myself that while one school may offer one lesson or one item, it does not discredit the lessons and the projects that are going on at the other school. And across the board, we are very fortunate to have what we have. Unfortunately, we are stuck in this predicament with the financial times that we have. And it's not, whatever happens, whatever decisions are made, they're never easy decisions. And I don't want any staff member at any school feeling like there are school committee members or individuals feeling like they are not successful or not sufficient enough to be educating our children. So.
In light of the news we just heard from the leaders of Pioneer Valley Regional School District, I'd like to make a motion that we vote to have a special meeting next week to vote to close Warwick Community School, and basing that on the leaders of this district. We've got good leaders, and I think that with that being said, it would give the school committee members time to either meet with John and the administration that wrote the letter, if they have questions, so they can get those answered, and meet next week to vote, because this is ultimately going to affect all the kids in this district regarding what cuts are going to be made. And we need to take a serious look at what's going to happen if we don't start listening to the admin team that's presented this letter.
So So there's a motion on the floor.
Yeah, motion to have a meeting next week to vote to close Warwick Community School. Recommend.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Jess.
I'm hoping that however we move forward with the decisions that we're making about the elementary schools, that we could get a financial analysis of what's happened with the light enclosure and how that looks on the books. Maybe Tanya could help us look at what happened with the closure, where the money went, how it's being utilized at Bernardston, and whether that cost is really, how it is working out for the district.
Okay, Tanya, you heard that?
Yes, I did, and we actually definitely stayed with that, but I do want to make it very clear that the recommendation of the administration team is not based on financial savings. It is based on being able to provide equitable educational services to all of our students and not necessarily saving in the budget. So they wanted us to make that very clear.
Okay. Go ahead, Jess.
I feel like I understand that that's where that was coming from. That seems like that's where that was coming from. I feel like part of what's being said about this is that this is based on the financial constraints of the district, though.
Okay, all right, okay. So there was a second, well, go ahead.
This really has nothing to do with the motion, but it has more to do with more information for maybe some people that aren't from Leiden. When we were discussing closing the school, there were so many heartfelt concerns and real concerns. Several of them had to do with, well, our properties will lose value. Nobody's going to want to come to town and buy a house in a town where there's no elementary school. Well, I can tell you that the properties have sold above market value in the last 6 to 8 months in Leiden, with people knowing that there is no elementary school. So that's certainly proven that it doesn't happen with every community, that your properties lose value and that your nobody's going to buy, because it's well documented in Leiden.
Thank you. Okay, so any further discussion? Go ahead, Sue.
So what's tricky for me as someone from Warwick is that I know that my community is, as far as I can tell, not wanting this to happen. Also, my community is really deeply engaged in a financial conversation and attempting to come to some shared understanding of the figures. And that hasn't been completed yet. So this feels, while efficient from your budgeting seat, I'm sure, really premature to us, because we are engaged in a process we would like to complete. Given what has happened this fall, I know that our community feels not listened to by this committee and not well respected by this committee because of how things went down. So to have this happen suddenly in this way sort of is adding to that, I'm sure, for the people that are here. We did propose many creative ideas for taking more responsibility for the cost of education in our town and for creating a new model for education in our town. Those have not been given a good hearing yet. So it feels like a rush to me.
Go ahead, Sharon.
In answer to Sue's concerns, I feel that this committee has gone way above and beyond listening to Warwick's concerns. We have spent countless hours at this table listening to the presentations, and they've been well presented, but you cannot continue to run a school that's not, it's just not financially feasible. It isn't that nobody doesn't respect Warwick. We all respect Warwick. And we know what a good group of students you have and what good staff you have, but that doesn't put money in the checkbook or the checking account. And that's where we have to think about all the rest of the students in the district. We can't just pull a handful of students from the district and say, okay, well, we'll continue to fund and lose money because we think that that's what we should do. We can't do that any longer. We have got to tighten our belt and do the right thing for all of the students in the district. But we have given Warwick every opportunity that they have asked us for. And I think it's very unfair and very unfeeling for anybody from Warwick to say that they were not heard, because you were heard hour after hour after hour. So I would like you folks to really understand, we have been listening. We've given you all the opportunities.
Jean was next, and then David, if you'd like to go after
I'm
that.
very sad to hear that Warwick feels like we don't respect them, that we didn't listen to them. That makes me very sad. And you can bring that back to them from me directly, because I felt I really listened. And if anyone else on this committee, I would be the first one to support the ideas of a charter school. What bothered me the most was the bottom line for the Horace Mann charter schools is that it still left the district financially responsible for the students. That for me was what the bottom line was, and that's what I could not agree to, was the financial responsibility for the students still rested within the district.
I don't think it did.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, it did.
I'm sorry, Sue, but that, if you read it all, the end, it might not have happened the first 5 years of whatever, but eventually the district would be responsible for the education of those students.
David?
I can see that one person, my friend sitting next to me, read and understood. But you missed the point. It's part of the Horseman School is part of the district. A school as part of the district is going to be dependent on the district's finances. The difference is and was that we have no right to any more than the per pupil expenditures in the district, instead of perhaps $10,000 per pupil more. And we were going to deal with that, and we were not given a chance. We don't need this district ultimately. We've documented this. I believe that citizens from Warwick will see this committee in court.
You're right.
Okay, so I would like the audience, we cannot have comments, I'm sorry, with all due respect.
I'm ready.
Comments are for citizens' comments at the beginning of the meeting.
Oh, I've heard other people make comments and you haven't said anything.
Mike, go ahead.
My motion was to have a special meeting to vote, to make a recommendation to vote on this. And we can have discussion then on that at that time. So the public can actually speak before that meeting then. And it gives the committee members time between now and that meeting to discuss any questions they have with the superintendent and the administration team. I think it's only fair that everybody get their facts. We're not deciding tonight. And we can discuss it more next week if we so choose to have that special meeting, which it would be beneficial to everybody, because what's going to happen in the district this coming year with the changes, if we don't make improvements to the education across the whole district, it affects all the students. And I think that's what the admin team has based their decision on first, is the education of the student. And then the financial aspect is probably the second part. And, you know, it's a benefit to the whole district, not just to one school. And, I mean, maybe John can say a couple more words on some of the stuff that they base their decision on with writing this letter.
We do that next week.
So David had his hand up, but Renee, did you want to speak on behalf of
I did have my hand up whenever you want.
Okay, just after David, and then if John wants to make a comment or speak to that.
I would suggest that a vote to have a special meeting to talk about Warwick shouldn't be too concerning, because we've had them before and the meeting didn't happen twice. So, let's see. If this is baseball, 1 and 3 is pretty good.
Okay, so Renee.
So I just wanted to turn the conversation back just a little bit. I understand it's mostly about finances at this point, as touted, brought forward by Mr. Townsley, but I do want to speak from sitting in a school where, and from an experience of watching and observing last year in Leiden and attending the public forums and listening to the folks that came to the meetings and understanding the angst that happened there. And being the person who does bus duty every morning in Bernardston and sees the 5 buses arrive instead of the formerly 3. And actually just the other day, I was reflecting that how much our experience has been enriched in Bernardston by the addition of the new students, and in addition, dovetailing what Jeannie said earlier, not most recently, but earlier about the enrichment of having new staff members, a new faculty, an ability to collaborate on a level that we hadn't previously been able to, so that truly we have been enriched in Bernardston, speaking from a first-hand, first-person reflection. So if there is anything good to be gleaned of this unfortunate predicament we find the district in, and struggling to do its best for the district, I do want to just share that I do feel like, and as a classroom teacher, I feel enriched and invigorated by the students that come down the hill each morning, and feel like I've been pleased and really enriched myself by the opportunity to have them in my classroom. So I just want to, I realize it's a small offering, but it is true. And we actually are struggling currently with making sure that there's equity across the district with having 3 elementary schools open with the shared staff. Because just given the geography and the logistics of stretching a certain amount of people to a thin space, equity is still not achieved, just based on even shared staff. So I just wanted to interject that. I realize finances are on the forefront, but also, and just an aside, I was at the 6 town meeting last night, and it was reiterated there that the foundation budget hasn't changed, even with all the rural aid infusion of money. And so we are going to, unfortunately, be right back or worse than where we are now financially, because that's the reality. All of the push to get the flawed foundational budget changed did not change. So all of our efforts are going to be to not, when the economy turns again and that rural aid money dries up. So we need to make efficiencies and do it at a time when it makes sense, rather than when we're in financial straits again. So that's just 2 things.
May I ask you one question, and you may or may not be able to answer? As you sit at the table with us, you represent the union, and has there been a discussion or a position or comments that the body would like, given that this was on the agenda, or is there no discussion or comment? Or
We really haven't had formal discussions, other than the one cautionary tale I would like to say is that we did enter an MOU on a 1-year track. And so that was entered reluctantly to have the principal be shared with a teaching contract. So that would need to come up again, and we could not comment currently on how that vote would go.
Okay, thank you. All right. So, go ahead, Karen.
Okay, When we were discussing closure of the Leiden School, and in the fall, the Warwick presentations, I had done some background reading on what happens to small communities when they lose their elementary school. And I would say that so far it's been okay in Leiden. We have some young parents with younger children who've become very active in keeping their children involved in community activities, and that has only supplemented what they've benefited from by going to the Bernardston School. So the town's sense of itself does not have to die when the school closes. There are other ways to keep your sense of community, and I would like to reassure anybody else going toward that path that it can work for you as well. It may be sad in many ways. You've put yourselves out there trying to come up with ideas that will help your school survive, but if in the end it doesn't, it is not the end. You in Warwick have a strong sense of community, and that will not go away.
So I'd like to bring everybody back to the table because there is a motion and a second on the floor, and we've been engaging in discussion. So, Anne, could you please recite the motion?
Well, the motion was for my council to schedule a special meeting next week to discuss the potential closure of the local community school and to recommend a vote.
Okay.
I'd like to offer an amendment. I'd like to add the words schedule and hold a meeting, and I'd like to suggest that the meeting be, I'd like to say that the meeting be held in Warwick. We want to hear from folks in Warwick. I think it would be more convenient to folks in Warwick.
Mike made the motion.
I just need a second to my amendment. I don't need its permission.
I'll second that.
Okay. So the amendment to the motion was that it was held in Warwick.
So it's to
Schedule.
and hold. Location.
Should be in Warwick. Okay. Go ahead, Sharon.
I believe the parliamentary rule is that you can amend it twice, so I'm going to make an amendment to the amendment.
Okay.
That the meeting be held here at Pioneer, where all the people can be housed way more comfortably.
Then the gymnasium at the Warwick School or the Warwick Town Hall, I don't believe that's true.
Okay.
Just to comment here on the amendment, is that when the vote to close the Leiden School happened, it didn't happen in Leiden.
And they closed your school. Congratulations.
Okay,
I'll
I
second
would
that.
really,
I'll second that
Thank you.
motion.
please stop for 1 second. We need to conduct ourselves one person at a time, speaking respectfully, please. The comments, we cannot have productive discussions with comments. So if we could just take our turn in speaking and raise our hands. I'm trying to get everyone to have the opportunity to speak and say what they need to say. Okay? Mike, I saw your hand up first, and then Sue.
Well, he's seconded.
Second Sharon's motion.
Okay. Sue?
Am I remembering correctly that it's actually required that a meeting happen in the town that the school is going to be closed in? I just think we should check that out. Something is in my mind.
I will ask Russell for the
Yeah.
clarification. Go ahead, Jeannie.
We closed Pearl Roads at a meeting here at Pioneer.
I remember that.
Because I think, given the weather, this
Right.
is a lot more accessible. Or the possible weather.
Okay.
No, I didn't
I just want to clarify. I think what I'm thinking is that the last time we were in this process, Desi wanted to make sure that there had been a meeting in the town before the committee, and we did that in Leiden too. We had a
Yes, we had a
community
public
meeting up
forum.
there so that parents could come and give feedback.
Yes.
And then there was the vote here. So that's what I'm thinking of.
Okay. I will, this evening, once our meeting adjourns, I will email Russell and ask him for that clarification.
So the last amendment to the motion was that the meeting happen here at Pioneer. As I say this out loud, I'm thinking out loud. If that is the amendment, and I email Russell afterwards and he clarifies that that is not the correct location, then and he states that the location has to be at Warwick, then per his advisement, we will have to move it to Warwick.
Wouldn't we have to have another motion, and he's not the governing body
Well,
of this?
legally, if that is how it has to happen, according to Mass General.
You're asking the question, if you get confirmation after, if this second amendment passes,
Mhm.
and then Russell says it should be held in Warwick, does that negate the vote? Is that kind of what your question is?
Yes.
Do we have to revote?
Right, I'm gonna ask him for the process and the legalities of holding the meeting at which location. Okay. Okay.
Can you change the second amendment to be held at Pioneer if legally appropriate, and then it doesn't?
No, she's gonna ask anyway, so I.
But then do you have to have another meeting?
I was gonna say, but then
Can we, I was gonna say, the amendment is at Pioneer, the amendment is the location of the meeting to be held at Pioneer unless otherwise deemed legally necessary to have it at another location.
Fine.
Are you, in the town of Warwick?
Oh, well, you seconded that, are you?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. And I just wanna make sure you have it documented. Okay.
That was kind of the
Okay,
question I was
so
asking.
would you just, let's restate the motion and have the vote.
The motion is to hold the meeting at Pioneer unless it's legally necessary to hold it in Warwick.
Okay, all right. All in favor?
Okay, hang on, I gotta write these down. So this is the second amendment we're voting on?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the vote passes. We will have a scheduled special school committee meeting at Pioneer.
Point of order, that was action on an amendment to an amendment. Now we have an amended motion. We still have to vote on the motion.
On the, okay. On the original motion, and Ann, could you please
Yeah, so
recite
that
that?
means that we don't have to vote on the first amendment.
I believe that's true.
Okay. And that motion was the one to hold this special meeting, hold and.
Schedule and hold.
Well, no, that was part of the amendment, so to.
So we won't necessarily hold it.
Okay, so to schedule a meeting next week to discuss closure of the Warwick Community School and recommend a vote.
Okay, go ahead, Sharon.
A point of order. We were discussing that it is posted on the agenda, vote on having kindergarten and grade 1 Warwick Community School students attend Northfield Elementary School next year. I'll put that in the form of a motion.
That motion was already made and withdrawn.
Withdrawn.
I'm making a new
Okay,
motion.
but can we finish this one?
Yeah,
We
we have
did.
to, we have
No,
to
we
finish
didn't.
the
We
first
voted on the motion.
amendment.
Oh.
So,
We haven't voted.
we have to vote, so there was an amended motion, the first one that David made, and we have to vote on that one now. And then if anybody else wants to make another motion on an
Well,
agenda.
I think her motion amended my motion.
Yeah, I did.
But it's still an amendment of the original motion, so we have to vote on,
The
we
original.
already accepted her amendment of the amendment. Now we amended the amendment, we have to vote on that, and then we vote on the amended amendment. Clear.
No. We just vote on the first.
On the first amended.
The original motion.
Yes. And could you please recite that, Ann?
Okay.
I just think we didn't have to vote on
The
that.
motion is to hold a meeting next week to discuss the closure of the Warwick Community School and potentially hold a vote to recommend closure.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Point of order, Madam Chairman. When she read the motion, she didn't include the amendment that you just approved.
Okay, sorry, that's okay. So that would be amended to say to schedule and hold the meeting at Pioneer unless legally required to hold it at Warwick.
Okay.
For the discussion of the Warwick school closure and
Okay.
potential to vote.
All in favor?
Hold hand up. If you get tired. Slip by.
Okay. You have everybody in. Opposed? Okay.
Opposed, sorry.
Okay.
It's been a
It's
long
late.
night. It's late.
Okay, any abstentions? None. Okay,
No.
all right. So the motion passes. We'll meet next week. Special school committee meeting. We'll schedule it.
Can you schedule your date?
Yes.
Now.
Let's schedule the date, and then
Okay.
Sharon, you can have your turn.
We'll schedule the date and then we'll figure out what we're doing.
Yeah, because we still have some other agenda items that we need to get through.
So much.
Okay, next week is the week of January 13th. Today is Thursday. We need to have the availability to post the meeting with the agenda. Mhm. Wednesday, the 15th? Thursday?
I mean, well, Wednesday is good for me. I don't know how many.
Wednesday works.
How many come Wednesday? Let's do that.
Seth is not available.
I'm not available on Wednesday.
Okay, Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday? David, Thursday? Pat, Thursday? Sue, Thursday?
That's a conflict. They don't really care about me.
But I'll be there.
Okay, so Thursday, 7 PM?
No.
Thursday, the
The
16th.
16th.
7 PM?
Yes.
And you'll
6
notify
PM?
us of the location.
Yes, I will make sure Joanne will send out the email confirming the location. 7 or 6? We typically have our meetings at 7, so.
7.
7, okay, 7 PM, Thursday, the 16th.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Sharon.
Vote on having the Warwick Community School kindergarten and first grade students attend Northfield Elementary School next year.
Okay, is that your motion?
In a motion.
Okay.
Second.
Seth seconds, any discussion?
Jim's
Yeah,
at the
it's an awful
bathroom.
late for expecting parents of elementary kids to come to a meeting that goes till 10, 11 at night, starts at 7. I think we're not considerate enough to think about Warwick parents' travel time in this winter and want them to come here. I think we ought to think about their schedules.
Any other? So the motion was
Jim's in the
to
bathroom.
vote on having kindergarten and grade 1 Warwick Community School students attend NES next year.
Yeah.
Okay?
Is there a second? Oh, yeah.
Second.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Oh,
Tell Jim
hold
what
on.
Tell Jim what we're voting on.
So Jim, the motion is to vote on having kindergarten and grade 1 Warwick Community School students attend Northfield Elementary next year. All in favor? Okay, opposed? Any abstentions? So it was 6 to 5, is that correct, Ann? Okay. So motion passes. Is it 7?
7.
7 to 5? Okay, thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is update on the discussions with the Warwick Education Committee as well as the financial calculations regarding the potential additional costs to the town of Warwick and the educational structure and other related educational impacts to the Warwick Community School and other district schools.
Okay, so I've had some discussions with the Warwick Education Committee to figure out what the town would have to pay to bring the cost per pupil down to the average cost of educating a Northfield and Bernardston Elementary School student. So I had Tanya run some calculations. We had a meeting and discussed those. Then we asked Rick Kingsley, our financial overseer, to also do some calculations to see how close he was to what Tanya came out with. And they are relatively close. I'll have Tanya go through these documents and give us a breakdown. You have the, sorry, these two, hold on, Tanya, hold on, when Tanya went through it. It looks like this, these two documents. You should have them.
So you guys should have a Warwick enrollment sheet, notes about the kindergarten and first grade as well as calculations from Rick Kingsley that says prepared by Rick Kingsley and a sheet afterwards that has multiple, and then has one at the top.
Okay, go ahead, Tanya.
So just to kind of circle back, there were multiple calculations that I personally put together just to show the various ways that we could essentially cut this cookie. The one that Rick Kingsley wanted me to do most recently, before he did his own calculations to justify or clarify them and make some sense of them to kind of stop the back and forth between Warwick and the central office. Was the per pupil cost by building only, which you'll see on the right-hand side of the sheet that I prepared, which is roughly $195,000 total. It says facilities costs that they were willing to subsidize, because originally that was the discussion, was just subsidizing the facilities cost, but overall that cost was $195,000. If you turn to the page that was prepared by Rick Kingsley, that is also based on just the building costs. It does not take into consideration transportation, administration, or any other shared costs. It's simply the education of the students at school. His calculation came up to $187,512. It also took into consideration the actual budgets of the school, the town contributions, and how that entire calculation is put together. So we were about $8,000 off as a whole. If this was something that the district decided to pursue versus the merger, this would be the calculation that DESI would support if Warwick was going to supplement. But again, I do want to make the point that it's not solely a financial decision at this point. It is about the class sizes that the other schools are reaching, because we have much smaller class sizes coming up in the future in Warwick, and that's why this is being looked at again. So even if we got this financial offset per se, it doesn't necessarily take care of the education equity that we're trying to maintain in the district as well.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone has any questions. Again, we vetted this out. We had 10 meetings with the people in the town of Warwick. Diane Noble and I went back and forth about whose numbers were right or wrong, so we decided to get the overseer involved so that there was no question of, whether, one party or the other was trying to make it look, better for their situation or bias. So that's why we got Rick into this equation. And again, we can see that those numbers are pretty equitable.
And I do want to say that I did have a conversation with the overseer because I wanted to make sure that we had the calculations that DESI, that were correct with DESI, and that DESI would be saying, this is what we have to use. So again, to reiterate what Tanya said, that's why Rick's numbers are included, because I did not want any discrepancies from either side. I wanted just the numbers. Okay. Go ahead, David.
I wonder if you were satisfied, because I was not, with the lack of underlying basis that there's a lot of hard inputted numbers they don't refer to anything. So, I can paint any picture I want with the spreadsheet built that way. There doesn't seem to be an understanding of cell reference and linking. Were you satisfied with that?
So I was satisfied, but I also feel like I had a conversation with Rick about because if I have questions about numbers, I always ask whoever's generating the numbers because I want to be able to understand, because I am not a numbers person. So I completely understand Rick's calculations, and I'm happy to have him put a synopsis, if you would like, together about that with the details that you're saying you do not have here with this document, to be able to convey that, if you would like.
I think Warwick will be requesting a meeting with Rick. There's no reason that he wouldn't meet with.
If the town of Warwick reaches out to Rick, and he can answer that question for you. I'm not going to speak on behalf of Rick, but I wanted to put an offer out there based upon what you felt was, you stated was missing from this document. So, any other? Mike, because we have to, go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, even without benefit of understanding the basis, there's certain items included that do not make sense to me, not an educator, a generalist who tries to understand how stuff works. You got a full-time nurse for a kid with a serious medical problem. That's not a typical general education expense of an elementary school. A tiny school doesn't need a full-time nurse. It needs a nurse because of a special needs child. To lay that all on Warwick is not rational. Okay? That's just one example. I mean, and we can find places like, we don't believe this, everything has to be equal. We could say bye-bye to a library aide and move volunteers from the community in to do this. And given the desire of this committee to close Warwick, we've suggested, well, there's an expense we'd have to meet anyway, so why don't we come to the table with it? Without even hearing that or getting anywhere close to that understanding, we're voting to close Warwick. There's nothing in the acts of 2018 that say you have to have a meeting in Warwick. It says it's up to the commissioner. They can realign, close schools, and the commissioner has to undertake a study. Will it be a real one?
Christian?
Mike, and then Sharon.
Yeah.
Because I do want to remind everyone, we have been here since 7. It is now 10:17, and we need to get through this evening. Go ahead, Mike.
I guess just to remind everybody that if there's needs in the other elementary schools that are gonna, staff need that needs to be hired, whether it's classes being split because they got too big. When we have staff that can be moved from another school to help facilitate that, which helps the teacher and the students by reducing that class size, and provides a benefit financially, it's a win for everybody, the teacher, the student, and the finance part.
Okay, Sharon.
David, I need to explain something that any student that requires a nurse for the amount of hours that they are in a school, the state law is that you have to provide that nurse. You have to, it's a law. And the other thing would be that the ACLU would have a problem with your statement.
I'm a member, why don't you call him?
Why don't you call him? You're the one that made the statement.
Okay. Go ahead, Paps.
We got better lawyers.
I guess I'm not against closing Warwick, nor am I for keeping it, or whatever. I could go either way. But I think that we have closed our ears, all of us, to what the town of Warwick has asked us to do, and that's to listen to them. They came in a couple months ago with a really organized plan of what they wanted to do. And we voted it down, and they're asking us again to think this over. And I really think we're beating a dead horse. I think we need to listen, and we need to do our homework for the next week. And then we need to come in with open ears and not closed minds and make that decision. But I don't want to make enemies. I don't want to make best friends. I just think we need to sort of listen to what Warwick has to offer. And then if after we've listened, we can really say, okay, I can be comfortable with this decision, then we can be comfortable with that decision. But let's not keep talking about this. Let's go home, let's do our homework for the week, because it's a week from today. And let's decide what we really want to do and what we can live with. But keep our ears open, and our hearts open, and think about the whole district and not just what's happened in other places. It just doesn't make sense, and it's hard for me to say that. I live in Northfield. My schools are going to be open anyhow. I don't live in Leiden or Warwick, so, Yeah.
So
exactly. Or we may regionalize everything. I mean, we don't know.
I want to make a statement because I take my role on this committee very seriously. And any decision or any vote that I've ever done is because I have done my homework. I have listened, I have done my research. Again, when Warwick came and provided us with that binder, I read every single page, I've read every single document, I've taken notes, I've emailed asking for clarification. These are not decisions or thoughts that I've not taken seriously and put a lot of thought into this. So again, that's just my position, and I would like that to be known. I don't come here ill-prepared to do the work that we're required to do. Go ahead, Sharon.
In response to Pat's remark about closed ears and not hearing Warwick, my word, I couldn't disagree with you more, Pat. We have bent over backwards and, again, spent countless hours listening. And I certainly have not made any decisions based on what happened in Leiden. You referenced that, and you can't think about what happened somewhere else. No, you can't, but you have to think about all the students in the district, not just 40.
Go ahead, David.
I'll always have memories, and not fond memories, of Sharon saying, "Warwick, you're not special." We all heard it in Warwick, and we didn't like it. And I want to say to my friends in Warwick and Warwick's friends in the district that to take a breath, and let's not do something stupid because we're angry. I'm not feeling much affinity for Leiden whatsoever, with the chairman of their select board lobbying this committee before the vote that did not advance our proposal to the DESI commissioner with Sharon's comments. Warwick will have to assess, but I hope that Warwick doesn't just run into the arms of another district and try to burn this one down, because it wouldn't be productive. And I think I do recognize that a lot of us are coming from the right place. We differ, but do look at the facts and do try to think around the corners, because we're looking at basically lopping off a perfectly good leg to lose weight. And the fact of the matter is we probably should be considering closing all of our elementary schools and moving this whole business under one roof. We should have one elementary principal, even if it is scattered site to start with. I think we ought to stand back and think a little more strategically, because the Mars report said we're dead in the water in about 3 more years, even if we close Leiden and Warwick. Let's think a little harder about this. We got to change the way we do business.
Anything else? Okay, and moving on, we have is there any old business? None? Okay. Personnel staff changes?
Nobody new. I don't know why Tanya's listed under Bernardston. We can change that on the staff form.
Okay. There are no miscellaneous updates, other business, good and welfare. I would just like to make one final statement. Some of us have been here a little over 1 year. Some of us have been here a little bit longer, some longer than others. But I would ask that when we come to the table, that we are respectful, that we follow process, that we are respectful with our comments, because the work that we do is very critical, it's very complicated, it can be very emotional, and I want to be respectful to everybody and everyone within the community when we're sitting at the table doing the work that we have to do. Okay? Next meeting will be next week. We'll get the posting out and the clarity around location, and then the next regular meeting is February 13, 2020 at 7. We have no executive session, and do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.